This conference will now be recorded.
Okay, we have two funds left, and these are the enterprise funds. These funds work differently than all of the other funds. Obviously, one of the hardest parts about all of this is all the funds have different rules, and that's the part to try and keep track of what can come from what can do from the other. The sanitation fund and the Pier fund are enterprise funds, which means they're supposed to run as a business. Sanitation fund, for the most part, does. We figure out every year how much we would have to pay them if they picked up our trash. And that's part of one of the numbers that's in here for the 200,000 or 110,000 we pay every year. It goes up every year by, they pay like a rent payment, but we also figure out how much we would have to pay them because we're supposed to pay them. If they pick up for the town, they're a business, they're supposed to collect it. We kind of do it a little differently and just we kind of do it a net thing. But anyway, so the sanitation fund collects, it makes money every year so far. It has $1.5 million that it collects just from going around town picking up trash. The other is money that comes in from selling things on gov deals or from selling the scrap to the scrap metal guy and some other little things. You guys, a couple of grants he gets from DHAT, so that's in that 61,000. And then we use fund balance because on paper, because of depreciation, it loses money, but it really doesn't on a cash basis. So its expenditures, the $5,570,000 is for all the things they need. It's just to dump it to the landfill, it's for all the people, it's for the benefits, it's for keeping the trucks going. And the depreciation is a pretty big number. So that comes out of there. So that's why they end up having a loss of $110,000, which is shown here as transfer to general fund. No, 110 is transfer to general fund. The $68,000 is a loss, and I believe that that's just about the depreciation number, if I remember right. So this one, it's holding its own. We have money saved at the state for them to use to buy truck or if they find land or whatever else sanitation may find. One of the best things you could decide to expand public works, in my opinion, and just my opinion, is that the sanitation fund would have the money to go expand. They could go buy a lot on Sandy Lane or something like that, use that money. Not that I want to go and make them go dry or anything like that, but it's a good source and not have to take it out of general fund. Excuse me. And then the last one is the Pier.
Just one question.
Okay.
Does recycling, which is part of sanitation, do we get profit from that recycling?
Not regular house-to-house curbside recycling. The curbside recycling program, we get to dump those trucks at no tipping fee at solid waste authority. So they take those materials, they separate it, they bale it, they market it, they sell it, and they use that revenue to maintain their free tipping and their education program. They go out to the schools and promote recycling and things like that. That talking trash program they have, that's all funded by the sales of their recyclables. The town benefits because we don't have any tipping fees. So the more we tip, that's why I've increased the recycling cart size over the years. So the more we can recycle, the less we have to pay in regular tipping fees. So we're encouraging everybody to put more in the blue can, because really you can recycle, probably 40 to 50% of your household waste stream if you try it, based on what they take. Not all of it they take, but everybody could do a better job. But it's not mandatory in South Carolina. Up north, it's mandatory. You get a ticket for not recycling. Here, some people can tell me, I don't want a blue can, and I have to take it away because it's not mandatory. You have to have a Moby, a trash can, but you don't have to have a blue card. So that's the benefit of the recycling. The only thing we make money on is scrap metal. We have anything metal we pick up on the street or on the beach or anywhere in town, we have a 30-yard roll-off container at the yard, which fills up probably 6-7 times a year. And we sell that scrap to Allen Scrap Metal, and we get a check.
Let me ask you a question. There's guys that ride around with their trucks and load up on all that stuff all the time.
Mm-hmm. You mean private?
Private people.
Yeah.
I mean, Kenny probably sees them ride through town, a little Toyota truck and another Chevrolet truck, and they go around and get all this stuff. And they have a whole truckload of chairs, refrigerators.
Yeah, they're scrappers.
Yeah. Are they allowed to come through town and do that? Or is it just one of those things, well, they're helping us out, we'll get it off the street, don't worry about it?
More the latter, more than just, but we don't have the enforcement people. Are they allowed to do that? We don't have a law on that, but in most places, you're not allowed to do that. Once people put it on the curb, it becomes the property of the town. But we don't have anybody to enforce that, to go around finding these people and waiting for them and signing.
Well, we're not gonna set, no, we ain't gonna
But
set it.
ultimately, it's one less thing we have to pick up.
Yeah.
And so it's not really any hardship for us, But that's what we do with our scrap metal. Like I said, it's not really a money maker. We get the extra recycling carts we buy every year. I pretty much use grant money for that, so it doesn't cost the town anything. We have to budget the expense, but we get it back. They've actually gone to $20,000 this coming year that I'm gonna get for blue cards. So it's really, as long as people participate, it's a great program. So that's why we have public education messages. We have signs on the garbage trucks, recycle, recycle, recycle. We encourage it as much as we can.
Well, I put more to recycle than I do to garbage, way more. So, for me, it pays.
Yeah, as long as our loads aren't really contaminated, we have pretty clean recycling loads. The problem that we would run into is if people put things in the can that doesn't belong there. Once your loads start to get to be a problem for them as far as the sorting facility, then they'll start finding you. You know what I'm saying? If you had more than like 6-7% contamination, then we'd start getting letters from them saying, you better clean up your public education program. But so far, we have some of the cleanest recycling that they get, so I'm not worried about it.
I gotta ask, pizza boxes, where do they go?
If they're not stained with oil, recycling. If they are stained with oil, garbage.
Okay.
How about electric motor?
Electric
Pool
motor.
motor.
No, that's, that would just put that with your bulk, and we'll put it in our metal container for the scrap metal guy. The recycling facility.
I've been putting it in that, I put them in that container, that's all I want.
What, in the blue,
Big blue one.
yeah, I mean, they're not gonna reject it, but it'll be handled differently than the stuff that they bail and stuff like that. They probably have their own bulk metal piles, like cast aluminum and things like that people throw in there. So it's not gonna get rejected,
Okay.
but it's not gonna get handled the way they normally handle like aluminum cans or scrap steel and things like that. Yeah, either way, it'll still get recycled.
At least the town gets credit for it.
Yeah, I mean, whether we pick it up and bring it to the landfill at no tipping fee, we're dumping the can anyway.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, and, just since I'm sitting here, I'll go ahead and do it from here. So the Pier Fund, when we put together this slide, it was really a collaborative effort between me, Diana, and John. And if you all don't know, as of right now, John will be the Pier manager, for lack of a better term. He felt that that fits, it falls under Public Works, as a place. So John will do that. Next administrator may feel differently, but I know John and I talked, and we felt that was the right thing for us to do. So what we've done with the Pier Fund request, and again, these are items that we believe that we need to start to look at from a funding mechanism. And we don't know if this is going to be absolute right now, as far as if this is our workable numbers from employees. And it may be something that, we're going to have to look at, as the pier is open for a year, from public safety perspective to the public works perspective. So, and I'm sorry, and are you all going to page 42? I forgot to switch those. Go with the one that is on the slide, and then we'll look at the more details.
It's on the same page.
So same page, okay. So we looked at, and I have spoken with the Pier Committee about some of these too, just to let you know that committee has made some recommendations, and we did take that into consideration. So we're looking at 2 full-time Pier employees, and that's really the Pier operations, the maintenance and the safety that John and I talked about. 2 full-time employees for the store. And then we started looking at, okay, what are the potential costs for store merchandise, the repairs and maintenance of the pier, the materials and supplies, and some of the miscellaneous professional services. And as far as the employees, again, this is their salary, and this includes their benefits for all 4 employees. The store merchandise, it may not cost $100,000. Talking with the Pier Committee and looking at some of the work that they did, it was less than that, but we're really just not for sure right now. So that's kind of a placeholder where we think that number may end up falling for the merchandise to get that up. And a lot of that depends on more discussion about, what we're going to sell. I will tell you, I did have a conversation with Tabitha about that because she was on the peer committee in her former life. She did marketing. And so we've had some conversations about what some of that stuff should look like, but we don't have an absolute answer for you. It's kind of a placeholder for those. The cameras and the insurance, we did have the insurance. Diane and I are going to be following up on with the two companies that submitted RFPs on that. There's some things that we're working through as far as getting ready to sit down with those two companies for with some questions and some things like that, and doing some comparison to apples and apples for their submissions. And then the cameras is going to be a little bit more of a conversation. The $75,000, was that half, or was that?
We have some money for this year.
We had some money from this year, that's right, this would have been the difference. The cameras will be a point of discussion beyond today that we need to discuss. There's been some developments with the cameras that I need to bring in front of council to have a little bit more discussion about. So we will do that. But the number that we have here is a pretty solid number that we think based on the totality of the cost for that and what we already have. So the request was $462,500. Now, if you go to the next slide, and Diane and I, we wrote this down, and certainly Diane can probably talk about this better than I can, but we looked at the revenues and we looked at the expenditures. The leases is around $290,000 once everything is leased. Based on the lease rates for the folks that will be in those two buildings, we still have the two that are solid and are done. The one is, I know I keep saying it's this close, but it was still where, and it is this close. I just had a conversation with that gentleman earlier this week. And there's one thing that we're working through that I'll bring before council because I'm gonna need some direction on that. The fishing fees is in that, yeah, based on the history is why Diana put that number in there. Hopefully that will be more. The sale of merchandise, again, $250,000 was kind of a swag number that we put in. We're really not for sure in the peer committee, but I will, again, talking with Tabitha, and again, this is crystal ball. She thinks that number can exponentially be way higher than $250,000. It all depends on how we market it and what we sell. So there's going to be a lot more discussion about that, about what that's going to look like. So, and of course, John will be involved in that. Then you look at the parking fees, and what was the miscellaneous again, Diane? I know we talked about that.
This is when you're renting kiosks. I don't know if kiosks are in here, or others,
Yeah.
they're gonna have events
Yeah.
or things like that. It's just kind of a name.
And then the transfer in,
That's money that's coming from hospitality, and most of it's coming from, I don't remember what's
I
coming
think it
from.
was, I think it was.
Most of it's coming from hospitality, just because that will cover and a little bit more the debt payment. So we just try to cover at least that and a little bit more, was my intention. It's always supposed to be around 200,000, I think, from hospitality.
And when we looked at the expenditures, you'll see that the 1.38, matches the total, for the revenue at our best estimation. And again, this is going to be getting the Pier open. Next year will be much more defined what this fund is going to look like because, the Pier will be open for a longer period of time.
What's the estimate on power and water
For
the pier?
I
mean, it's not on here, that's why I'm
That's
asking that
probably-
question.
Good question.
Probably in the operations number,
Yeah, and it
120.
could, the 120.
It's in the 120 of operations.
And that's something that we'll have to define a little better too,
We don't have
won't we,
now.
John, as we go through that, because we really don't know.
Yeah.
That's a good question.
And there are separate meters for all the tenant
Yes.
spaces, which will be transferred over to the tenants for their own power and their own water. So we'll just be paying for the pier, the public bathrooms, public space, not the rented out.
Right, and we actually just dealt with that this week, so
Yeah,
the tenants will pay for their own
Yeah.
power.
Yeah, they'll start up in our name as temporary power, and because it's cheaper. And then as we rent them out, they'll be transferred over to their name.
Right.
But the meters have all been inspected.
Is there anything we're missing on this, John, Diane, as far as the discussion point?
it's a work in
It's still,
progress.
it is very much a work in
Kind of what I
progress.
say every year about it.
Because I can take Rob Clemens' estimation and just looking at from a staffing perspective, and a lot of it depends on how long is the store gonna be open, you know, all those things, is two enough, you know?
Well, you got two enough, but you got $100,000 down for them, two of them in the store.
But what are miscellaneous professional services?
Spot engineering,
Engineering.
if you have to have somebody come out and look at something, if we're having a problem on the pier that you need an engineer to resolve, all of our contracts will be expired by then. We'll have to have an engineer come in at some point, guaranteed, to look at something and tell us the solution.
But this doesn't include Kenny's 2 people.
No,
No.
they're general fund.
That's general fund, public safety.
Yeah. Can I just
This
interject
is the
here?
cover, this is for the town store and
Yeah.
John's folks to be able to maintain.
Yeah. Yeah, and I
Yes,
just,
sir.
yeah, I just want to reiterate just, you know, the whole store concept is a great concept, but just bear in mind that that was never the original intent when the pier was designed. That space was supposed to be for the operation, safety, maintenance people and an education center to have educational stuff, you know, what's the water temperature, what kind of fish swim in the ocean, have a TV on the wall with a loop. That was the original plan for that space. That has evolved over time, and I'm sure council's will, into a town store, and that necessitates all this extra.
Instead of doing a town store, would we be better off just lease that section for somebody who wants to run a town store? You save
Well, a lot of stuff, a lot of pier stuff comes to that office. Like if the elevator stops working, the alarm's gonna go off in that office. A lot of stuff is wired for that office to be a town-owned space. So we're gonna have to have,
We're gonna have somebody there.
we're gonna have to have a desk in there anyway, just like an operations center for the pier. You know, because if something, there's gonna be alarms going off in there, lights, there's gonna be certain things that are gonna, you know, if there's a stairway issue, a fire alarm is gonna ring in there first. So to lease that space out, I don't think would really be.
John, is that in the space, does they want to put the store in, or is that in the space beside the store?
No, the space beside the store, the intention of that is, it's a roll-up door. We were gonna have some sort of a vehicle in there, like a gator or a golf cart. So when we pick up the trash on the pier, or we have fireworks, you can drive up like a little electric thing, drive up, you know, we're not doing that yet. But that's what that space was,
That's the store space.
the storage, yeah, there's a town thing on the corner
Right,
with the glass windows.
yes,
And next to it is a storage little room with a
yes.
roll-up door that was intended to be for like a little golf cart or gator or something like that to move around with, to transport things.
Well, the store ain't gonna have that, is it? It'll still be for your gator or whatever you put in up there. That storage space beside of that store is still going to be maintenance, is it
Yeah,
not?
The peer committee had talked about using that for like warehousing for merchandise.
Oh, no.
And I strongly recommend against that,
Oh, okay.
unless we put some shelves
I
high
thought
up
you-
on the wall. or
I
something.
thought we were talking about that whole space there with the little room and the big room, but no, I see. where
Yeah,
you're
the
coming from.
store is just gonna be the corner.
Yeah, okay.
I'm not sure, and John and I have talked about this, we've talked about it. We're not sure, and you all can probably help us, how the space morphed into a store.
It morphed into a store, and so therefore all these items,
Yeah,
these expense items
and that's
are
where
a
I was,
natural result of that.
and that's where I was going with that.
That's
Yeah,
how it morphed
originally-
into the store was built,
Yeah, but
because Bill went and said that, Bill went and investigated us when we went down to Folly Beach and we looked at them. They run their own store operation down there.
Yes, sir.
And they figured it would be more profitable if we ran our own store operation. And if we were gonna use one of the buildings.
Building the
to do it,
buildings, yeah.
Well,
And then we decided that's too much lease.
I think, and the reason why I bring that up is, and this is, and I know we'll circle back around, but I think the discussion needs to come, does the town want to use that space as a store? I mean.
See,
It's fine if you lease it to
it
someone
was
else.
originally designed that
We
the
don't need to be
third
doing
building, oceanfront, where the windows are, was the information center. That was someplace you could go in and learn about the ocean, learn about environmental concerns, learn about whatever it is. The little corner and the cubby hole was for maintenance, security, you know, if we need to have a wheelchair stored there, we need to have, whatever emergency services, they had their
Yeah.
place to put their stuff.
And that is what Ms. Keating, not to
That's what it
interrupt you,
was
ma'am.
supposed to be from the beginning.
That is what I'm looking at Chief Hoffman, and this is the reason why I brought that up. That is what we were told originally,
That was the original plan.
and then it morphed into
The store.
Well, but what we changed to is we changed from the information center to an actual commercial space.
Yeah.
Now, the other space, until the advent of Bill's pipe dream that Folly Beach makes over $1 million profit a year by running their own store, which was actually a revenue calculation, not a profit calculation. They actually lose money and have free services of the county Parks and Recreation Department.
Right.
So it's even worse than that. But through those discussions and the advent of the Pier Committee, then became, oh, well, we can have this as, our little marketing place, we can sell t-shirts, we can sell coffee cups, blah, 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 blah. I don't think that was ever, formally recommended, formally agreed, whatever. But we lost the whole pier maintenance security space by selling t-shirts.
Yeah, well, that's what I brought it up to Rob when we had this discussion. I said, has this ever been formally approved by council to make that into a town store? Or is it just a proposal that gained its own legs? Because, the original concept of the pier was that, like, as you say, building C, which is closest to the ocean, that was going to be, it was assumed the type of business that would rent that out would be the type of business that would sell all this kind of stuff.
Right.
So
That was the gift shop.
The bait and tackle shop.
Yeah.
Because that's what was put on the pier in the original design had no vision for the future being anything other than what it's always been. We had a bait and tackle shop, we had a restaurant, we had a gift shop.
Gift shop, yeah.
We had ice cream. It's what's always been there. It's, there was no foresight, there was no future visiting. It was, we're just replacing what we have with what we had.
Right.
So there was a gift shop in the front, which, Prime Ocean Space, you put it as a t-shirt shop, doesn't make much sense to me, but whatever. And you had the ice cream shop, you had the bait shop, and you had the restaurant. That's what it was supposed to be, and that extra little cubby hole, due to the extra bathrooms and so forth there, was for your on-site security maintenance,
Staff.
You gotta have your bucket and mop and crap in case somebody, spills something or whether, you gotta have some place to put stuff. That's what those two corner cubby holes were supposed to be for.
So I think the question as we kind of go through this, as we circle back around this is, and that's what we wanted to show you that. We
Yeah.
wanted to show you, here's gonna be the cost associated with that. And then, we're gonna have to decide, does having the store benefit not having the store and moving forward? I think from the Pier Committee, and I don't want to speak for the Pier Committee, all of that, because I wasn't involved in that in the beginning. But, I don't know if the recommendation came from them or if John said it kind of grew legs somehow.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, I think it did too.
when you look at the costs that are associated with having the store.
You're spending as fast as you make.
And you do all that, I think that's gonna be a council decision on how we move
Yeah.
forward with that. I know from a fire chief perspective, and I don't wanna put words in Chief Hoffman's mouth, we had many discussions about the public safety, and I say public safety, I'm talking about public works too, having a space where officers could go, where if we ran an incident, we could do whatever, but.
Well, under these
we
numbers,
need to figure that out.
you're taking in 250, but you're spending 250 to make 250.
That makes sense.
So I don't know if it's something that is set in stone or is something you all want to talk about.
Well, you're gonna have somebody in that office anyway.
Well,
You're
they'll
gonna
have
have a person. So
Yeah,
you're gonna have
one of the
people
Pier
in that
staff
office.
is gonna have a desk in there.
So there's gonna be somebody in that office, so you're paying two people to do nothing except watch what's going on, or you're paying two people to sell something and watch what's going on.
Well, it wouldn't be two people at the
Why
same
is there
time,
a
because
person
you gotta be
there?
open from like 6 in the morning till 10, 11 at night.
Well,
Why
okay,
are-
but that's what
Be
I'm
staggered,
talking
yeah.
about. That's not one person,
Why
that's
are we assuming
two.
a person is there? In the 60 years the pier's been there, there's never been a person assigned full-time to be on the pier. What's different?
Well, that was one of the arguments that we had before, is that we've had some legal issues on the pier where the town has gotten sued and the insurance company has held it against us for not having an employee or
I know
a
from-
representative of the town.
You have an elevator
on site.
now, and you have significant more square footage of heated and air conditioned space. There's a lot more potential for safety problems. There's a lot more potential for
Well, I think it's something as simple as,
cleanups.
what if somebody throws up on the pier or throws up in the bath? I mean, from the amount of people that, well, and I wasn't here. I think having a person on the pier is a prudent thing. I know as we went through the insurance things and having some discussion, are you gonna have somebody on the pier, how that affected their proposals and their rates?
Yeah, those
That was part of the discussion.
Yeah, the restroom by itself is gonna have to be cleaned several times
Yeah.
a day.
So is it just sending somebody there the way, you do all of the other restrooms throughout the town? But I don't think that's comparing apples to apples, honestly. But, I mean, that's something that I think you all need to talk through a little bit. I think I know how John and I feel about having a dedicated person there. I think the question really comes in the store piece. What does that look like from a revenue and expenditure perspective?
I've got a question. If, is the bait and tackle shop gonna be the one that sells the fishing license, the fish on the pier, and they're gonna be responsible for the money? Or is that county employee who is running that office there gonna be the one that sells fishing license, and they be responsible for the money? Because the money for the fishing is gonna be pretty significant. Excuse me, whoever takes $150,000 for fishing, just for the fishing, is pretty significant amount of money somebody's gotta be looking after. And are we gonna have to pay these people who own the bait and tackle? Are we gonna have to pay them out of this $150,000 to sell license? That's something else that it has never been brought up that I know of. Who's gonna look after that? That's gonna be something that this town's responsible for. Getting either the bait and tackle shop to do it, or that employee who is sitting in that office that could be selling T-shirts or whatever at that time. They might be able to take that money in too for fishing.
So, right now, Mr. Stanley, to answer that question, I'm not gonna be able to give you 100% of an answer now, but I'm gonna be honest with you. That has been a discussion with the bait and tackle shop. The last, lease that I sent out to you all did address, the, fishing license and the fishing fees. It was in the lease. We have since pulled that out, me and the owner, because he feels that should be probably a separate agreement, which I will tell you, I think is probably smart. But, because there was some discussion that he didn't know if he wanted to do that, but further discussion about what the traffic that brings into that business, I think.
Somebody walking in.
His business. So, it looks like it's probably gonna be percentage based. I mean, as far as, 80% to the town and 20% to him, we're still working on what that number looks like. And it looks like as of right now, that it'll be the bait and tackle shop that when Mr. Stanley wants to come in and fish, either buys a license or has a license or pays to feed the fish, gets a tag, goes and fishes. So that's the way we're looking at it right now. It wouldn't be a separate person to do that. But I can't say that 100% because the lease isn't signed. I can just tell you where we're at.
Well, I'm just saying, if we have to staff that office with somebody in that office, why couldn't that person be the one that sells these fishing licenses and takes in that money and looks like not even have to pay the store that 80%? Why are we putting a person out there just to run down and clean a couple bathrooms twice a day? I know there are other things that's gotta be done out there, but if a person staffed out there for 10 hours a day or whatever it happens to be, that's a lot of time. A lot of time you got there, you got a lot of wasted time. That person needs something else to do besides sit there and wait for the next time to go clean that bathroom or go mop a spill up on the pier.
I think the problem with that is, and then certainly have more discussion, John, is, that if you have a person that is dedicated for fishing license and fishing fees, then they can't leave to go clean a bathroom. They need to be there when, mom and dad and the two boys come to fish or the two girls come to fish. They need to be there all the time. They can't leave. So I think the question comes in, if we do that, what's that number look like? That's why we put 2, sir. And then if council decides, probably against John's better judgment, that there's nobody on the pier, then we'll have to live with it. And then as things progress on the pier, well, this does not work. We need to do something in the following year. So it's all good discussion that I just think that I think we kind of realized that when you all saw the numbers for the people that it's going to take to like run the store and all of, it's kind of, it is two separate things. It's the store and it's John's.
Yes, the whole
It's the-
facility
but
is
it's the whole
one,
facility,
and then
but it's kind of separated what that
and
means.
the store is its own entity.
So
Has anybody asked Tabitha? Because she was the one that was behind the store.
I can tell you, and that's a great question. I have talked to Tabitha about this. And when I showed Tabitha the numbers for this, and again, we do not have a crystal ball. And it's gonna take people to be able to run the store. She said that, I don't wanna put words in her mouth, but that $250,000, she said could be increased probably 4 times over. Now, what does that mean? How does that happen? Who knows? But
It
she
would in
also-
a free enterprise,
But
it will
she
not in a
also
government
said
enterprise.
that it is very dependent on your
Guaranteed.
marketing plan and what you sell. Probably just t-shirts won't do it. So, but that's a good question because the Pier committee was involved with this and did some really good work on, this piece. But at the end of the day, there's a cost associated with selling t-shirts and merchandise.
Well, but under that scenario, you also need staffing somewhere that goes out and procures all that other material and
Right.
does that marketing campaign and does the evaluation, where do we get the rack of all the shell necklaces and
You're right.
bracelets and where do we get all those coffee cups and where do we get the sippy cups and,
Unless that is a store manager,
well, and
that's not in
again,
Tabitha's
Yeah.
scope.
this is what I tried to explain to Bill, that Folly Beach has one and it's beautiful. And they bring in about $1 million a year in revenue. It's run by Parks and Recreation of Charleston County. If you actually take what it costs to do that and what the expense of the Parks and Recreation is, it's losing money. And we don't have the benefit of Parks and Recreation. So to actually make a money-making entity there, you better start looking at somebody that runs a gift shop and whether they want to lease that front space.
That would be the smartest thing to
And
do.
I know the guy on the corner that already has the beach shop there was interested in leasing space on the pier at one time. I mean,
And we have not from that space, I'm sorry, Diana, we haven't pursued, like, to this point, having that space available for someone to lease. It's kind of been this legs thing about the store, and that's really what, however it transpired, that's why we're here today.
well, and I think if you're just gonna use that little cubby hole in the corner by the bathroom to say, we sell town stuff here, it's no different than what we sell in town hall.
It's a losing proposition.
We're gonna say, okay, yeah, you want a t-shirt, okay, here's $7, $4 for a coffee cup, whatever it is. That's not gonna make you money.
We're not making any money off what we have selling the stuff in
No.
the town hall now.
No.
You don't have the traffic either.
Well, this is a little bit off topic, but since John and I are both here, we can both attest to having had to testify at a case where the lady fell on the pier and all of our tenants just said, not my job, and nobody ever told us anything, which is why we are kind of so adamant about somebody needs to be there. But we didn't know anything about this case, and the
Or your
lady got,
leases need to be rewritten.
well, they
Well, the
just,
police will be there. Police
well, I don't know if they're
officer.
gonna be there all the time or not. I mean, I don't know that, but there was nobody there before. I mean, grounds was on and off, don't get me wrong, but people didn't, all the tenants said is, see the landlord. So that's why we kind of got feeling that somebody should be looking out for our interest, because it's a lot bigger pier than the $2 million one we had. We got it $20 million.
The police department ain't gonna be there all the time, they're gonna be in and out. They're not stationed on the pier. That's
No, but
just- That's just part, but you're saying the police department's gonna be there all the time. No, they're not. That's a district that they're gonna be working. They're just not gonna be on the pier.
So I think, again, as we circle back around, this is good discussion, and honestly, we needed this.
Well, that's why I brought up the
You know,
store,
we
because I
did-
wasn't sure if
We
that
needed this
was
discussion with you all to figure out, because we don't have a whole lot of time to, well, at least figure out from a funding perspective on what that looked like. You may deflect it and say, we're just not gonna do anything with it right now. Certainly, that's in your purview too, but. So to keep things moving, really the next thing is how do we do it? So we kind of showed you the budget, the general fund, we've showed you all of the enterprise funds and all of that. And now Diane is going to go over the summary requested by each fund, and then we're going to have a little bit of discussion about, okay, well, how do we fill it? How do we fill this $1 million hole that we're asking?
Okay, so I broke general fund down into two categories, because one is people, which is the bigger number, and the general fund operations, those are just the items, these are only the things that are on the slides. I think I did it twice, but anyway, that would just be the things like Sabrina's plan, which we know we're gonna do, and some other things that were coming out of general fund, and probably the capital items are in there too, all the capitals in there, yes. And then hospitality fund, as I told you, we bring in enough money to spend the money we have. So hospitality, stormwater, and capital projects are pretty much, they're on their own. They contribute more to us than they spend. They contribute to general fund. Sanitation and the pier, those are the two ones we just went over. And John's truck is the $395, which is pretty much a normal. It's just a different kind of truck he buys every year. And then the pier is the things we just went over, just getting some direction on where are we going? What do we want to do? This is the best guess at the moment. Do we want to go in that direction? And the last page, I think that I have, and then I give it back to Rob, is the fund. These are as of June 30th, because these are the audited numbers, and I kind of felt like these were the most pertinent numbers, even though things have changed, but you can't really pin it down in the middle of the year like you can on a yearly audit. So at the end, the general fund at the end of June had a general fund balance of $5,004,000, $2,005,000 of it is restricted, it can't be spent. And the $2,886,000 you can use for anything you want. But remember that that's the number that has to be the 4 months. So it has to be, that's your rule that you wrote, you want 4 months always available. The restricted is the disaster fund, it's the capital replacement fund, it's the VA, the victims advocate money, all of that money is restricted, can only be spent for the items it was designated for. Sanitation, the restricted part covers the truck values, and then the unrestricted is everything else they have that they can use. The pier is almost all restricted because of the loan and money we got from everybody. The $2,004,000 is pretty much the value of the land per se. State accommodations, it's all restricted because it's all supposedly for tourists or advertising or how, whatever we want to slice it. So is hospitality, it's for the certain things that our rules say. Stormwater is restricted to only be spent on stormwater. Local accommodation, unless I guess I missed that one, but that's also supposedly tourist. Capital projects has 3 separate funds in it. Capital projects has its regular capital projects, $145,000 is unrestricted. The street improvement fund is what John uses to pave the roads. That's money that comes from the county and et cetera. It's separately accounted for. Beach renourishment fund, I knew I had that number somewhere. That's the money we have right now in beach renourishment, $873,000. And it is in a separate fund up at the state, so it's earning its interest goes in there. So that money is what we have. We didn't add, we added this year, but we're not going to add next year unless you tell me you want to do things differently. The drug funds, the $19,000, 1% fund 29, and the K9 of 10. Those are restricted and can only be used by police and fire. And then, like I told you earlier, the numbers down at the bottom, American Rescue money, that's what we have in American Rescue money that you need to decide by 2024 what you want to do with it.
Spent by 2020.
So spent by 2026, and that's about.
Rob, those figures are different because 1% here says 29,000.
This is as of June.
That's as of June.
This is as of June.
Okay.
The other ones were December. It's a different timing.
Does that answer your question, Mayor?
Yeah.
Well, the thing with the American Rescue too, don't forget we've gotten money. That was why I added the second piece, because we got money in, whatever it was, November, I guess it was. October, November. Yeah.
So, so how do we do this? And again, these are our funding proposals, and we really we broke them down into 2 options with some multiple components. And I know this is going to generate a lot of discussion, but this is what we want to bring forward to you. Option number 1 is a millage increase. And we took the millage increase and we broke it down and tried to explain it so our community would understand, really, as somebody that lives here, what this would look like if council decided to do this. And again, it's a decision point, it's a conversation. The millage bank allows for approximately $8 million increase in 23 and 24, and that's what Diana has checked on it. Each mill yields $75,000. So at a 4% assessed property, and that's owner occupied property, if you increase 3 mills, and you can see the property values based on $300,000, $500,000, and $750,000 going from 43 mills to 46 mills, you'll see that that increase to that homeowner is $36, $60, and $90. That is annual. So that would be the annual increase. You slide over to the chart and you look at 6 mills based on the same property values, going from the 43 to the 49, you're looking at $72, $120, and $180 annually for that home. At 8 mills, which is the highest that we could go, would be to the 51 mills, and you're looking at that increase of $96 for that owner occupied property to $160 into $240. When you look at a 6% assessed property, and again, these are properties that are not rental homes that are not occupied, businesses. And you look at the 3, 6, and 8 mil, and again, that is at $300, $500, and $750. You're looking at $54, $90, and $135 if you increase it by 3 mils. You go to the 6 mil, you're looking at $108, $180, and $270. Again, that's annual. And at the 8 mills, the increase would be $144 annually, $240, and $360. So we wanted to at least show what did this look like? You know, what is the impact on the community, on the businesses? What would this look like to those folks, so they could understand that? And again, I know much more discussion as we circle back around on this.
What would that bring to us if we had a millage increase? How much money would that make a difference?
If we went 8 mil, and you'll see that in the increase. So if you go and we'll just go to the 8 mil. If you look at the 4% assessed, that would be an increase of $1,530,000. Oh, I'm sorry.
It's 75,000.
Be 60,000.
A meal. So
Yes.
each meal would be.
But you'll actually see it on the chart too. So if you follow it through here, Mr. Holder, that was a great question. So if you go to 8 mil and you look at, let's just slide over to 750,000, it would be a $240 annual increase, but it would be, and Diana, make sure I'm saying this correctly, it'd be a $1.5 million, or actually it's $1,530. Your question is, what would it bring to the town?
600,000.
Yeah, 75, yeah, each mill. Yeah, each mill is
$75,000.
$75,000 each mill. Yes.
That's what it would bring.
Which,
So
and realistically, we
it's
see
less-
this every year on the millage increase, and every year it got shot down, and every year Surfside balanced the budget, and everything moved on fine.
Okay,
So
it's a discussion.
tell me how much is on the wish list? Well, everything went up, but it didn't go up. It don't have to go up.
Well, we know the village is going up
Because all
next
your
year.
prices go up.
So, and I'm sorry for your confusion. I confused that. Do you understand that? You got it now?
Millage
Mr.
does
Holder?
not have to go up every year.
So,
It does not go up every year.
But it needs
But
to
the
go
problem
up
is,
once.
we're in an inflation situation, so our costs, if we don't do anything, we're barely gonna cover the cost. If we don't do anything.
That's
Because-
wish list, right? Is that
Well,
basically
if we
what
don't
you're
do
saying,
any of the
right?
wish list, just from year over year, the only thing that really increases year over year is the value of the property, and that's because of the building, and that's about $100,000. Well, when your inflation and your payroll goes up 5%, you covered that $100,000 and you haven't done anything.
so again, and you're right, Mr. Drake, it comes up every year, as I believe it should come up every year, and it should be something that council considers, and whether you do it or not is going to be something that this body will decide to do. What we tried to do was, it was talked about last year, but it was really never shown. And we wanted to show it, what it looked like for the impact, and there'll be much more discussion, on this. But you're right, we're barely going to,
Well, but this
We
isn't
will have-
enough.
that's
At,
right.
at even an 8 mil increase, we still have another $500,000.
Yes,
to
ma'am.
go.
Yeah, right.
Yes, ma'am, we do. And we do, and we realize that because we can only go up 8. There will be an assessment year next year. And We understand that, but we also understand that the discussions are getting ready to happen about, you gave us your wish list, let's realistically talk about, how we're going to.
If we don't decide on this part today, I know we don't vote on it, but if we don't tell you that this is what we're gonna do, your wish list is out the door. Or you don't have money to work on your wish list.
And we're trying to fund stuff that was on your department. The
I agree.
positions there are all on a grant that ain't there, and it's gonna roll right back to the taxpayer.
Well,
Yes,
but if you
we
look
have
at some of the
funds.
places on the wish list, there's several places that John already has agreements
Yes.
for grants that
Right.
exceeds the $1.1 million that's,
so.
we need to fund.
So here's what I would suggest if you're okay with this. We wanted to show this. Let me show you option 2 and let's go to the departments, because you're right. We're going to have some direction. You're not voting on anything, but it helps Diana as we go to figure out when we go through the wish list, because Ms. Keating's right. There's some areas, there's money there. There's other things, other funding mechanisms other than a millage increase that is going to be able to pay for these things. So we wanted to show this first. We will probably be going back to this slide a bunch as we go through this, because we're going to need some direction on, at least philosophically, you can go work on this number, right, Diana? Because we're going to have that. Because the other piece is there is an option 2. And the option 2 is, depending on how this shakes out, if this is even something that you all even consider and move forward with some direction with, you still have an option 2. And option 2 is the scopes change. It changes departmentally. My request change, John's, the towns, Chief Hoffman's, they change. And then we have to react to that based on direction from you all as we move over the next 2.5 weeks for the next presentation. And then we delay the pier, we delay all of this until the pier completion. I know that I've heard people say that. I've heard council members say that. Is it a realistic approach? I don't know, but it could be an approach that you all are thinking.
The pier open, so
Yes, ma'am, but it's
that ship
it's
has
an
already
option B.
sailed.
And then, or we do nothing and we stay status quo. So.
Well, but I think you got your options backwards.
Well,
I think we should change the scope, or at least consider sharpening the pencil there as your first option. And then your last resort is, what additional millage increase do we need to make up any deficit? If there's any left.
Okay.
That's my opinion.
Yes, ma'am. That's fine. Yes, ma'am. We just wanted to show you the 2 options in order properly or not, but at least it's part of the discussion. So with that, I think, yeah. So with that, now that we've presented the information, you still have it in front of you. Now I think it's a good time for us to go back and to look at the departmental requests and to at least start to think about some of that. Or if you want to go right to the millage and go, here's what we're thinking, we can do that too. It's totally up to council. We just wanted to be able to, I'm going to do Luke first. Everybody keeps looking at me, get Luke out of here. I think they want you to leave. I am going to get Luke first,
Well,
but.
I think there's still a couple pieces of information missing when we go into evaluating, the wish list. And I kind of recategorized them out of, departments and into more of the categories of spending. But we should have a list of what is our asset, replacement schedule. We know we've got a schedule for replacing some of John's equipment, replacing cars, and, every year we should see, and I think right now it has 2 cars and you want to up that to 3, so, that's fine. But if we have approved an asset replacement schedule or an asset, amortization schedule, whatever you want to call it, if that's already been approved, then that's not a wish list item that says in the budget we have 2 cars. In the budget, we've got the dump truck. In the budget, we have whatever on this year or that. And, we have other things that are contractual obligations. We've got maintenance fees for our IT. We've got maintenance fees for our systems that, Kenny's using and so forth. That should just be set out. We know what that is every year. We should have a facility, maintenance schedule such that we know, yes, the fire department is getting gutters this year. The police department got a roof last year, so, you know, that's now on the schedule for something else. We should know that going into the budgeting that, okay, here's our asset maintenance schedule. This is what goes into the budget. It shouldn't be on a wish list. So how much of what's on this wish list for facilities, for asset replacement, for, you know, annual maintenance is already in the plan of how we operate the town? You know, we should be able to narrow down what are really things that we didn't plan for. That should be your wish list.
Basically, what has been told since we went through this, basically that is what they're saying is, it's not really a wish list, it's things basically they need. Chief needs 4 people, Kenny needs 2 people, John needs another person. There's needs that is not in the budget whatsoever, and we have went over this and talked about it.
Yeah, every year we've always put the capital replacement items as a separate thing, just to
Right.
present it to you all in case, because they're big ticket items in a lot of cases. As something that, not just a typical operational cost. It's always been identified separately. Having it in one list, you can do what you said, Cindy, and you can cross out the stuff that has to
Right.
happen and just leave the other stuff, and that'll narrow it down for sure.
Yeah, and then you talk about, okay, well, our situation has changed. We want to create the waterfront patrol district, you know?
Right.
And here's a justification for that, and this is what I need to do that. Or, you know, things have now changed. We deferred this from last year. It's not in the schedule for this year, but since we didn't get it last year, we need to put it in this year's schedule. You know, yeah, okay, to keep up with our rotation of assets and so forth. I mean, we shouldn't have to evaluate every little thing if it's an ongoing plan that we've already agreed to. I mean, the rotation of the police vehicles such that they're in use every 8, 9 years, I mean, that's been a philosophical approach to managing our fleet forever. I mean, the fact that we put 2 cars in our budget every year for the police department replacement schedule that should be a no-brainer. It's like, yes, that's what's in our replacement schedule. Now, revising it, saying, okay, I want to change that schedule, make it 3 a year. Yeah, okay, now that's a discussion item on justifying why it needs to go to 3.
And I do think, and Ms. Keating, I do agree with you. I think that it's kind of twofold, because what Mr. Staney is right also. In the fact that we're coming to you, we're asking for these needs beyond some of the things that you have a replacement schedule. We know what that looks like. So we know what it looks like. We're coming to you all, we're asking for those. But in reality, quite honestly, we need to do a better job with that. And that, honestly, the next 2 minutes, we need to have, I have a replacement schedule with the fire department for SCBA and all that. But what we have not done, and Kenny has that, he knows what his looks like, John has that. What we really should do from fiscal year to fiscal year is, before you all come in here, you should see that and go, well, one, there should be a funding mechanism set aside, like kind of we do for fire apparatus every year. And it's like, okay, you approve every year the equipment replacement plan for John, for Kenny,
And those
and for
are
me.
typically
That are
5-year
typically
plans.
so you know it. And Diana can say the money's there, because we put a funding mechanism, whatever that looks like, the money's there. All you're doing is approving the plan, which we really wouldn't have to discuss, other than saying Kenny's getting 2 police cars because it was in the plan, there's already funding. The question would come in, the stuff that you all would see would be the extra. It would be, and I think you're saying the same thing.
I'm saying the same thing, but I'm just saying.
But right now, these are our needs.
We have it here in front of us, we don't have to have it separate, we can go down through here and mark off the things that we know that you're gonna get.
Yeah, like for example, we've got 123,000 monthly maintenance for Heritage Digital. That's not a wish list, that's a contractual commitment.
Right.
We shouldn't, we
Yeah,
should
and I
not
didn't, we
even
didn't want.
complicate
that's not a-
things. I mean,
no.
that should be in the budget, period.
Yes,
We've got, network and new computers. Well, I know there's a certain amount of equipment upgrade already under the contract, whether this is new stuff or not, I don't know. But if we're under a contract and committed to do something, it shouldn't be showing up on what we've been, lovingly called the wish list.
yes, and
It's a contract commitment, it's in the budget,
right.
there's no discussion required, we
But
don't have a choice.
But the reason why they're in there, and Luke, if you want to come up, you can go ahead and talk to this now, is other than the contractual commitment for the annual expenses, these other items are not part of it. These are extra things that is not part of it.
Yeah, and that's fine, but I think there are a lot of things on this list that if they're not on a 5 or a 10-year plan, they should be.
No,
Such that
Agreed.
they're not, items for discussion every year that overcomplicates what the budget really needs to be about.
I agree, and I think moving forward, and I know we've had some discussion about this, departments need to come with a equipment and I use apparatus, vehicle, whatever, plan. So all you do every year is go check Chief Hoffman's apparatus, his equipment, his replacement plan.
John has it, because he gave
And I
it
think
to
he
me
does,
last year.
John, yeah,
I got a copy of it last year.
and I have one. I think I'm sure it's an internal one.
Yeah,
But-
so you can go through here and say, yes, look, the public works truck is there, the mower's there, the 2 police vehicles there, the fire blah, blah, blah's there. Take those off the wish list, they're in the budget.
Yeah, we have a 5-year plan,
Yeah,
and we
that's what I
update it
thought.
every second to third year, when we move everything forward
Right.
into the back 2 years.
And
And I agree, but that's.
Right. In taking a look at it, when we look at the amount of money that we have as opposed to the amount of money we need, we've got a 1 point something.
little, yes, sir.
Councils, this is my personal opinion, council shouldn't be looking at the police department, telling them, no, you can't have this or you can't have that, because nobody knows better than the police department on what they need as opposed to what they want. So in taking a look at the difference in it, there's an 11% deficit. So if each one of our department heads took that proposed budget that they have and work on it to decrease it 11%, of course, the hospitality, there isn't anything because the money's there for that. But it's basically out of the general fund. If they'd reduce it and take a better look at their budget and see if they could reduce it by 11%, we'd be in good shape.
Our operational budgets.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I first of all, we're using the word wish list, which we're all saying that. What we came to you today from a department head perspective and presented to you is what we need. It's really not a wish list. We need them. We've evaluated it. And you're right, Mayor, to your point, we, as the experts that you all rely on, we're telling you we need these people and here's the reason, or we need these things, here's the reasons why. To go back to what you're saying is fine tune the pencils and look at our operational budget. I mean, we could do that, but to find 11% out of the fire department budget would be very difficult. Finding 11% out, because we did do that. Trust me when I tell you, we really did look at that. The direction of when we all sat down was to look at our operational budgets, clean them up. If we're not using all the training funds, reduce it. If we're not using all this fund, reduce it. And we truly looked at all of that. But 11% it would be very tough because.
Yours is in personnel.
Because it's all people.
It's all
Yes,
people.
it's-
His is in
it's
people. You
mainly
got
all
20
people.
officers now and 2 more you want to add, right?
It's people. Yeah, it's all people.
I mean, it's just.
So we could, to your point, Mayor, could we go back at council's direction, each department head and go, okay, let's fine tune it a little bit, but that fine tuning is not going to fix.
Well, right now you're asking for 4. We had the SAFER grant to get you 4.
Yes.
Okay, and the SAFER grant didn't come through.
Right.
So now you're asking for the town to pay for the 4s that you still need.
Yes.
Okay, if we gave you 3 instead of 4, you'd still be 3 ahead.
If you gave them two, they'd still be.
In one.
Yeah,
But
one
I-
is
you know what I'm saying?
Oh, no,
I'm not-
Mayor, I totally, and this is why we wanted to have this conversation. We don't take this personal. This is the
But
people's
it's
money
our
out there,
job
and we
as a
understand that.
council. They're presenting what they need to us. Our job is to find the money, figure out how we get the money to pay for
And
it.
then-
That's
And how do you
Well,
afford
see,
it in a
that's why I
1.9
think
mile
there's
town?
a subset of this list. There are certain things here that are
Could
already,
probably already be done
obligations.
that could be moved off here a little bit.
yeah, that we don't even want to be considering. There are other things that are new items and need justification, for lack of a better word.
You're muddying
And
the
what's our
water.
carryover, or what is projected as our carryover from last year?
I don't think I haven't even done February. I don't know the answer to that at the moment. I don't know the answer. It should be okay because we didn't have anything exceptional this
Yeah,
year.
see, I mean, there may be some money in there.
Well, yeah, there probably will.
And I think to
Maybe
your all's
residual
point, I mean,
balance in the general fund, is that what you mean?
if we go back to, I think what you're all saying, excuse me, like if we look at non-departmental requests, and I think Luke does need to talk just a minute about the two, yes, ma'am, Ms. Keating. But I think when you look at facade grant, you look at HVAC replacement, you look at now the floral club and the civic center roof, I think if I'm hearing you correctly, we're putting these in here as wish list items, but honestly, we're gonna have the money, well, potentially, to fund these, and if we do, we don't really need to bring them to you all, we just do them, we just get them done. And we have to be prudent about that, you know, as the administrator, what needs to go before you all, what, from our perspective, it's like, well, we can go do these things. If we don't have the money, we don't do it.
Right.
Versus coming and putting all of these things on here to say, to muddy the waters a little bit for you all.
I see where Cindy's coming, going to
Yeah, I-
mark off of these things that it's automatically gotta be done. But all I was saying is here, we could go down through the list and mark them off now. But if you take them off before they get to us, it'd be better.
Well, and I think you're right, Mr.
It'd be
Steen, I think
easier.
that's what you're all trying to
It'd be
say.
easier to understand.
I think equipment replacement and a vehicle and apparatus replacement plan is prudent. I think council approves it every year. I had an apparatus replacement plan, the council approved every year. I didn't have to even talk about it. They went, it's approved because the money
Well,
was
yeah,
there.
and
Versus
if it
extra
comes
stuff.
up and, you know, we doing that, it comes up and says, now we still have the 1 million gap in just givens without any additions,
That's because the vehicles come
Well,
out of hospitality.
then that's a different story.
So-
We got a different conversation to have.
So when you think about this in if, you know, let's say that we could go back and clean this up a little bit and say, okay, some of these things, the problem is when we looked at all this, there wasn't money for it, right? There's not really money for these things.
The thing there isn't money for in most
It's
cases
people.
is people.
And that's why I went to
And
this slide.
That's really what the people.
So I think some of this we can clean up to your all's point and not muddy the water. So that's why I went back to this slide. Because this is it. I mean, the Heritage Digital, Lou can talk about, because we do not have the money to be able to pay for the equipment and network upgrades. We don't have that. It's not part of the contract. You know, there might be a few computers or something like that that Lou could talk about that we could probably pull out of there, but the network upgrade is so not part of the scope of our contract. And then we threw into peer expenses. So if you just look at the people, like Diana said, that's the big ticket. A lot of these other things that we've talked about, you know, we can sharpen our pencils, but, you know, Kenny still needs these vehicles. I mean, there's some stuff we won't be able to pull out. Am I saying that correct to the way you all feel?
Yeah, well, as I said before, you know, normally in every previous budget year that I've been involved with, the capital replacement has never been an automatic. It's always
Yeah.
been, bring it as separate slides, we want to see what you're getting so we can look at it and you have to justify it.
But I think moving
But I'd be
forward,
happy to.
honestly, and because you already got it, John, and I know Kenny and I, we already have that internal. If that's something moving forward, I don't know how we work it into this year, but that is absolutely a good, because then that way, you all know.
But as a council, if you do that, we'd still have questions about why is Kenny asking for 2 cars? They're just automatically, you know, that,
But I
it's just the way this council, and I think
Well, that's up
just
to you
this
all.
one, council, has that perception of, they want to know everything that's going on.
I do, and I
And I
think,
think that's got a lot to do with it.
And it might, yes,
That's
sir.
why I think this is good. I think what Ms. Keating is saying would probably help a whole lot because them things is already put up. But it might come to a year where Kenny's getting him automatically 2 cars every year. But we don't have the money to
so,
that, then we just want to get him 1 car that
so
year.
what you do is, to that point, is really the discussion about vehicles and equipment that is not checked off, approved every year is the discussion. The other
Put down a slide,
vehicles,
that's all.
yeah, the other vehicles, Kenny's replacement schedule of vehicles, which is every, I don't know, however often Kenny replaces it, once it reaches mileage or hours or whatever, is automatic. And if the money's not there, then you don't sign off on that plan. You don't sign off on that. I do think that's a prudent way to move forward.
You just break it into 2 slides.
Just break
Yeah,
it
but
in.
then that's when you have the conversation
You have the
with
conversation like
Kenny,
you're talking about, Mrs.
and you
State.
say, okay, you want this mobile CAD software. And I'm just using it as an
Right, it's
example.
extra. Yeah, that's
Do you want this or both cars? You can't have both. And you say, yeah, I really need both cars this year, I can defer this till next year. That's why we have those conversations.
Yes.
But, I don't think we need to rehash every year that Kenny gets 2 cars, if it's already in this schedule. Unless it becomes a problem that the budget can't handle these schedules anymore.
You don't fund them.
Then we
Or
need
you
to
change
take a
them.
closer look at these schedules.
Well,
And
that's-
whether it's vehicles or facility maintenance,
See, I think the thing is, Eric, I know John has his plan, I have my plan, Kenny has his plan. I can tell you Eric's got a plan because we've
Right.
talked about, I think what we haven't done is formalized it into a process where council votes on them. And then if money is short, then, or if money is short, you don't fund it, or you say, Kenny, we can't fund this, I keep using Kenny, I'm sorry.
Well, we
Kenny.
just-
You
yeah,
can't, or you
department.
keep using, or you say, Rob, you can't get, I'll use me, Kenny. Rob, you can't get a fire truck this year because of the shortfall of whatever, then you just move it in your replacement schedule to maybe a year or 2 down the road. That's one thing. Or the extra stuff, like I asked for an extra software program, that is not in my budget. And then you have those discussions. But moving forward with this right now, because I think we can certainly work on that. I don't know if that can get formalized within this budget, but it needs to probably happen. What you're all saying, if we're hearing you correctly, is we could go back and look at our operational budget to see what we could cut in that, which that's a prudent direction for us to do. I think I just need to tell y'all to be cautious of that because we're not gonna find 11%. It's just not gonna happen.
well, I don't think you need to cut, but I think we need to narrow the list of, I'll call you, the victims to be cut as these requests, because not all of them are requests. They are operational planned expenses that should be in the budget. And then there's other things that are new, we hadn't planned it being in the budget, they are new requests. It's that subset of new requests is where we should be looking at, can we recover $1.1 million?
So it's mainly this, it's the people,
It's the people, that's where it's at.
It's the people and some of
some of
the
the other.
other things that,
And we can do that, yes, ma'am. I mean, we can totally do that.
Just the people,
Yeah,
what a
if-
shortfall is, because all of our employees have to come out of the general fund.
but if we are also showing
not all
some
of
of
them.
these things that are, this will be funded out of hospitality tax,
Police department has to
then if
provide
it's
children.
in the hospitality tax transfers, then we don't need to be seeing it here.
Say that again, Ms. Keating, I'm sorry, I didn't hear.
If some of these requests are like for the sanitation fund, or for the hospitality tax allocations, or the A-tax allocations, and they're in the budget as far as transfers from these funds, and, there's funding available, and from what I understand, they are in the transfers.
Yeah,
From
we talked about a
hospitality
few of
and tax,
those,
blah, blah,
yes,
blah.
ma'am.
So, picking on Kenny, The only ones we need to look at are the 2 officers. Because everything else is gonna come out of the hospitality fund, and if that's all tallied already under those fund transfers in the overall summary
It's not part of
budget,
the 1 million.
Mostly this
it's not part of the 1 million.
It's the 816 that you need to cover, which is on page 44. Basically.
I was
But-
looking at page 9.
44. Okay. We got
For the most part, and then
For the
there's
most
some
part,
other
yeah, it's the
general
salary.
fund operations.
Yeah, then we go to the fire department and, the garage doors and the PPE are gonna be covered under hospitality. So the only ones we need to talk about are, gutters, paint, blah, blah, blah. But again, is that on the facilities maintenance schedule?
It's on, but it's not
We
funded,
don't know.
Well,
because we really don't.
but if you have a facilities maintenance schedule that's been approved,
Yeah. it would
we
be.
know what facility maintenance we're gonna perform this year, next year, and in the next 5 years. That should just be an automatic input to the budget.
I agree with that.
Until it poses a problem,
Right.
as far as a first round budget, these are all things we said we were going to do this year. It goes in the budget. It's not something new, it's not something added, it's not a wish list, it's not a new toy, it's none of those things. If it comes out without all extra requests that we can't afford our base budget that we have assumed we're going to do, well then, yeah, now we gotta go back and look at our plan for asset replacement and asset management.
But move, and I hear, and I think all of us agree with that. We don't have an issue with that, because actually that makes it easier on us also. Because from a finance perspective, there's money being tucked away, being put away to be able to pay for this plan. It makes it easier on us, and the only thing you would ever hear from us is if something is extra. But for this year, for this budget, we still have to have that discussion about.
Yeah, I can just tell you which items on mine are new and the rest of them are. The rest of them
I
have to be
would like
done.
to say something as far as how we do budget. Chief Clemens, from experience that when you moved into that department, that a lot of things had been ignored and needed to be brought up to speed. Building maintenance has been ignored until recently. Computers, which a 98% of non-departmental increase from last year's budget to this year, most of that can be attributed to computers. They've been ignored, and we need to upgrade computers.
Yes, sir.
Because he can probably tell us when the end of life is for Windows 10, but most of our machines probably do not support Windows 11, and they need to be replaced, or we're gonna be out of
The
date.
majority of your computers are Windows 7 vintage, have already been upgraded to Windows 10.
Right.
So the majority of computers that were recommended to be replaced in this fiscal year are on average in excess of 6 years old.
But see, they should have already been in the budget as a
Yes, sir.
replaceable. We should be on like a 3 or 4 year rotation, not all of them, but every year we replace a portion of them.
And what we'd like to do is really no different than Chief Hoffman does with his cars, is you have a fleet maintenance program where you predict out, this year I need this 10, this year I need this 10. And then the important part is you replace them while they're under warranty and still working proficiently. So if you have a computer that's 6 years old, it's gonna require more maintenance, and the person who's using it is gonna get less work done too. So that way, when it breaks, you're not paying an employee not to do something because they have a broken piece of equipment. So there's a lot of side benefits in having the proper equipment in place.
So that goes back to really the discussion all of us have had, because I think we're all saying the
We're all on
same
the
thing.
same
We
page,
really
but
are. I mean,
That's
council's
why the
on the same
budget is
page.
so offset, I think.
It
this
is,
year,
and
because
it
we're trying
is,
to
and I
catch
think,
up.
Diana wrote some notes, and I do too, to be able to go back, and especially on that one slide for the 815,000, we can look at that, we can probably remove some things that may be paid out of other funds, and all of those to clean it up, to make the 1 million look a little bit different, but, it's still a cost involved. I mean, it's all semantics, it's still gonna cost to be able to do those things. And I think moving forward, because right now, to do an equipment replacement plan, to do all that now and bring that to council for this for 23, 24, you know, that might be a little problematic, other than just saying, these are the needs that we have this year. But I think council, this is my opinion, and I can have discussions with next minute, we, as a department head, our feet need to be held to the fire next year to say, unless there is an equipment replacement plan or a fleet plan that we approve that every year a fire truck gets replaced based on a standard, or Kenny does this, or John does that, because I think they're very prudent with what they do, then it's not approved. You know, at least that plan, and you do it right at the beginning of the fiscal year. So right now, we deal with this, but in July, we need to have an equipment replacement plan, an apparatus or, you know, vehicle replacement plan that gets approved in July as you move forward for the next fiscal year. So the discussion is about 10 minutes versus an hour, especially when it comes to equipment like Kenny. Kenny's got to replace radios just like I have to replace radios. And right now, we don't have a true funding mechanism to replace radios. You know how much radios are? A lot. So we show all of that and you approve the plan, and let's say 3 years down the road, we're moving along with this plan, Diana's saving money, we're gonna be able to pay them when the time hits. But something bad happens like COVID, then you might have to delay it or push it to the next year. But the only way to be able to fund that plan is there's still the big picture discussion about, well, millage and those things, to be able to have the pot of money to be able to do it. But I think we all hear what you're saying. We understand that. And we can go back and take some of the things that we've put in here that are on the wish list that are going to be, that we don't have to muddy the water with those, and truly show. And it's really kind of this slide. What do you guys say?
I think it's gonna be more in personnel than it is anything, and I
It
don't
is,
know
yes,
that y'all
sir.
gonna be
That's
able to
why
do
we did
anything
this.
about that. But I've got a little different question on general fund balance. Diane,
What page are you on?
I'm on page 7, on 13th,
Page 7?
page 7, it's on page 7, but it's slide 13 or whatever.
Okay. Oh, yeah, yours is different than ours, sorry. Okay.
Yeah.
Line 13, page 13, yeah.
So it's down, it's this, okay.
My question is this 2.2 and 0.3 months to run the town, is that gonna change any, or is that gonna stay the same on the general fund when it comes down to months covered for the town, if we have money set aside to cover the town in case of disaster?
By ordinance, it has to be 4.
That's what I'm asking. What do we need to change that? How are we gonna
Well,
get that?
that's what I said earlier. If we solve the $1 million shortfall by whatever means, this then comes up to
This
be
will come up.
this comes up to $3 million,
Right.
which means we are north of 4.46.
Okay. I know that this wasn't, if this was the case of what you're budgeting now, that ain't even close to what we have.
Right, if I
That's
run everything through
Because-
here,
Yes.
that's why this number.
So that $1 million that the shortfall is gonna have to bring, that'll bring this number up too.
If you.
If we come up with $1 million, it's gonna replace some of this money. Okay. So the only way.
The things, if all the things on the quote wish list that you might not want to do wishes, if there's something you don't want to do, well, I don't know, you don't want to fix the roof on this building,
Yeah.
whatever. Which I can't really take out of hospitality because we don't use it for tourists, we don't use it for police, we don't use it, it's gotta come out of general fund.
Yeah.
So the taxpayers have to pay. If you don't want to do that, then when you kick the can down the road, that will change that number, because it'll change, they'll take that out of this whole thing, so it won't have $1 million loss. It'll be that much less by the city center. So it depends on what things, if there's something you just don't want to do, you want to kick it till you build the building, or you kick it till whatever.
Yeah, but
That will build that
That will
number.
change that number.
do you not have to keep track of hospitality so that we know that we haven't gutted it and there's none left?
I do, I have a good feeling, that's not, hospitality, anything that comes out of hospitality, we are okay. It's the things that say general fund are really your problem. And then there might be some things in general fund, like I said, that if I sit and be creative and not thinking about the whole, I can possibly pull it from someplace else. It doesn't necessarily gonna hurt us as much. But if you don't wanna do something, that's the ones I really wanna know.
And thank you for bringing, that goes, and this is why I pulled this slide back up here. Because the deliverable for us today from you all is some general direction, which are starting to give us that, how to move forward from a numbers perspective. And to Mr. King's point, we probably will have to go back to the millage or at least have an idea, or if we clean this up,
But you
that may
still-
go away.
But still realistically, just being real right over the board, they need to be a millage increase to fund some of this stuff.
As your interim town administrator, asking that question, and again, I'm not sitting where you sit, but Diane and I and the department heads have had a lot of discussion. At some point, this town is going to have to look into a millage increase. You cannot continue to provide the services that the town expects if you do not do that. Everything exponentially goes up. Can we clean things up? Can we have these plans that we're talking about? Absolutely we can. But when you're looking at this general fund budget summary slide for the major factors affecting 2023, 2024 general fund budget, to your question, Mr. Staney, it's new employees. We haven't even really talked much about salary and benefits of a COLA increase to 5%. We need to take care of our employees and give them some type of COLA.
But you, not trying to interrupt you,
No,
but you've got to have
You
something
have to.
be bringing some of that money back in. I don't care how we structure this, if we go cut everything, the salary increases of the employees we have right now is going to go up. We've got to get money somewhere to help pay that.
You can't,
If we don't raise the village.
you can't continue to, because right now Diana, God bless her, is, pulling money from here, pulling money from there, because thank God, Town Surfside Beach has funding mechanisms other than their general fund to be able to pull from, like most municipalities do. But this is why we wanted to show this way, because when you talk about tax increase, and I certainly don't have to explain to you all what that, when people hear, I know when I hear that, Horry County's getting ready to raise my taxes, So I'm going to be impacted by a tax increase because they've said in order for us to continue to do what we're going to do, we're going to raise your taxes.
We got to have some.
I'm going to have a tax increase.
But-
That's why we tried to show this to you all as you thought it through, because it's you all, of what the impact is to a person. To a person, it's $750,000 if you go 3 mills, but again, it's $90 annually. But to Ms. Keating's point, as we go back and dive into this and maybe make that 1 point maybe look a little bit different, we still got to pay for stuff. And it's still not enough if you go to an 8 mil increase. That's why we have to collectively sharpen our pencils
Just say,
to figure it out.
just say you go back and clean up just part of that $1 million. There's still a $500,000 downfall that we got to cover somewhere.
Nobody wants a tax increase.
No, I
But-
live here.
But if we don't do something, I say we're a family trying to have a conversation. There is going to be an impact to service delivery to this town eventually. It might not be this fiscal year, it might not be next fiscal year, but it's coming. And it's going to, where the rubber meets the road, the delta's finally going to get smaller and smaller, and you're not going to have to be able to do the things that everybody expects the town of Surfside Beach
Do
to be
you
able
not
to
think
do.
that the longer we put it off over the years, and right now, maybe we could do 3, but if we put it off another year, maybe 2 years, it's gonna be that 8. It's gonna be that 8.
And to,
Well, but the other thing that I don't see here, and maybe there's another fund or something, but we had originally 2 years ago approved the $700,000 to build the court chamber council civic center across the street. This building is not going to last forever. I mean, it already has its own mold and structural issues here, so, inevitably, we are going to have to bite that bullet at some point. Where's that money come from?
Well,
It didn't carry over because at the end of the year it ends. It's sitting right now in that fund balance.
It's just in the general fund balance, okay.
from what my understanding of this, and to your point, is I thought this American Rescue money was basically something that we could use to build our new facility wherever it happens to be. As we know, as a council, as a whole, Kenny's department is busting at the seams. He's wanting to add possibly 2, 3 more police officers down there. That means more room for Kenny. So we've got to look at it as a council. I know pre-concession is supposed to be doing this, but we gotta look at it as a council. What is the cheapest place to do this and build our facilities for what we want, or not what we want, what we need, just back to the needs.
I want to touch on that, but I want to just follow up with your question, just if you allow me, sir, with the village, is, I almost went out of my head. At the end of the day, when it comes to the millage increase, nobody wants it. But it is, council is going to have to decide, along with the community members, because, I mean, it's the community, is what's the acceptable risk? If the acceptable risk is for Chief Hoffman to not get new police officers, to make sure that this community stays as safe as it is once the pier opens, then that's a decision point. If the acceptable risk is for John Adair not to get some of the equipment that he needs, to get another person or 2 people to be able to do the things that John needs to do from a public works perspective, there's the risk. If my firefighters stay at 2 and, you know, we're still running these calls and council feels and the community feels it's an acceptable risk, well, we're not gonna like it, but at the end of the day, we're gonna have to live with it, and we will continue to pull out the trump card and go, that's a bad analogy, pull out the card and go, you know, we wanna be able to do this. At some point, something is going to have to give.
Yes, sir.
And one more thing, and then I'm finished, Mr. Kinkin, is, before I forget, because I'm getting older, it'll go right out of my head, is the Creech and Associates municipal evaluation is no different than what Ms. Keating has brought up. And all of you, actually, because I heard all of you on the same page with this, it's no different than than this fleet plan that John Adair has right here. It's no different. All it is a plan to move, for you all to digest and figure out what you can do and what you can't do. That's all it is. And you're not signing off on it, you're just getting a plan on what it looks like to address the needs.
See, I have a problem with Bill, on the fire department. It's like, if we give you 2 people for the fire department and 4, and if you put in for a grant, maybe you can get the other 2 people for a while that we don't have to pay for, would be a great idea. You know, for me.
Yeah, and I think it's a great idea. I think listen, at the end of the day, we're gonna take what you give us, and we're gonna hug you for it when we leave this room. But 2 people is huge, but I have a shift of 3. And to get to, what shift is only gonna be running with 2? I mean, so, you know, there's some dynamics to that, but I understand what you're saying. Stanley, you're trying to figure out what we're gonna
get the best deal we can get there.
Yes.
The county's already figured this out. They're raising taxes every year. And so we're all paying extra taxes to the county. And whether we like it or not, I think we're gonna have to start doing it in town just to keep up. Because if costs go up 5% and your income doesn't go up 5%, then you're in the hole. And, you know, and I think 5% is low.
Yes, sir, and and no one, I mean, as a taxpayer, we all pay taxes like everybody else does. I would much rather have my tax go up 3 mils on I don't know, a fiscal year basis than 8 mils. You know, so at least that way, talk about a planning perspective, from a council and a community perspective. They know, and you know, there might be a year when you don't have to do it, I don't know, but you're far better off planning for it than getting hit with the big bill at the end of, you know, it's.
Well, it's either you
But
either
it's tough
increase your
decision.
income or you increase your services. That's a choice we have to make.
It's the acceptable risk, yes, sir, and it is tough because, you know, everybody is on a budget. Everybody's got a budget, I got a budget, everybody's got a budget, and you start raising taxes, it's an impact on people. But it's also gonna be an impact on this community when, and I think Kenny used I've heard Kenny say that if we don't, what is predictable is preventable. We know the pier is gonna be busy. We know that the pier is gonna bring in probably different things that the town does not have right now. whatever that is, I don't know. But at least we could say as a collective group, we can't fix it all, but we've tried to plan for it because, well, we know we're supposed to. And there's a cost to doing that.
When's enough's enough? We got 22 officers if we add the other two?
Yes.
Is 22 enough, or we need 24?
I think you rely on your experts for that. You rely on your experts to say that. I think enough is.
Since I've seen it, we went from 19, probably in 2019, how many officers do you have in 2019?
Well, but we've always been understaffed to run 3 shifts.
Well, you try to run through
Plus
shifts.
you have state and federal regulations that weren't in place that now we have to comply with.
We did that with the.
And it just, it makes it, either people have to pick up the slack or you get somebody.
I'm not gonna put words in Chief Alden's
When's
mouth
enough?
because he is the police chief and I don't know nothing about running the police department. But I will tell you, there is no way, and it's a great question, Mr. Drake, but there's no way for us to be able to answer that.
Because our problem's personnel. Our problem's not this other little stuff, it's personnel.
There's no way for us to be able to say enough is this. Enough is enough that we should be prudent with the taxpayers' dollars as we make our requests. And I can tell you collectively, this group right here, we have absolutely tried to do that with the requests that we have made. That's the best way I can answer that, sir.
The basic math says to run an operation with 2 people per shift, 24/7, you need 20 people.
There's a staffing factor for all of that.
So, is 2 people per shift the right number? Some people say no, some people say yes.
Well, what it really comes down to is, are you satisfied with the level of police protection you have? Are you satisfied with the crime, the amount of crime that you have? Are you satisfied with the results of the crime prevention efforts and detecting, deterring, and prosecuting? Are you satisfied with the level of police protection you have? Because it's really just, it's a fluid thing. If you say, well, I think we're over policed, then maybe you have too many police officers, or if you think we'd like it to be a little more safe, then you need more. But so it's real. There's 4 or 5 different models that you can use to say what staffing should look like. But
Yeah, are they
there's
10-hour
one
shifts?
variable.
Are they 8-hour shifts?
There's one variable that every community has to answer, and it can be done through the comprehensive plan process. How much safety do you want? How fast do you want a police officer at your door if you have an emergency? We have the pleasure with our staffing model to be able to provide one of the most important aspects of police work, and that is patrol. Patrol. Do you have just enough police officers that all they can do is go from victimization to victimization to victimization to victimization? Or do you want to have the ability to have extra police presence in order to detect and deter, and to avoid victimization of our citizens and our visitors? So
Lower County.
yeah, and there are models in the area that do that. And they say we have just enough police to basically go take the reports from the crimes that have already happened, and then hopefully we try to sort it out through investigations, and then they have big teams of detectives to try to solve them. So
There was a time in the 60s, we had one person control the speech. One
yeah,
person.
actually,
Can you imagine what little bit they got done?
100 people.
Nice people, but that's all they had. And here was Bob Shirk, lived on Dogwood Drive. That's all he did.
Yeah, well,
But
they
we had
probably had,
no protection.
yeah, we probably had 50 people that were here.
in the late 90s, we had 12 officers. We had 12. But at the same time, there was maybe 12,000 calls for service at the time. Well, last year, we broke 25,000 calls for service.
Well, I look at it this way, Kenny, as you've reported to us before, your call increase is up 50%.
From month to month, several times in the
Yes.
past 12 months, there was a 50%.
To me, you ain't got enough, it don't sound to me you have enough to take care of that. You shouldn't be at 50%. You know what I'm trying to say?
Right.
I mean, you ought to be able to answer them calls quicker. Because if that's bringing crime down, then you won't have a 50% increase up here to have that if you had enough people probably doing the job they should be doing.
And that's one reason why I think I've communicated to council before that we are trying to leverage technology every chance we get, because technology helps us to get to prevent from needing more and more and more and more. So it seems to be a good.
Well, I think over the years, you're asking for two now. I think in 5 years or 10 years down the road, you're probably gonna be back asking, because there's gonna be more and more crime going on. I don't think it's gonna, the crime wise goes down. I think it keeps raising every year.
Well, I think that.
And you need more protection.
I agree, sir. And, you know, it's just, it seems that we have a working model right now. If the community is satisfied with it, the council satisfied, we seem to have a working model that seems to be working. And, you know, that's why when we talk about this waterfront patrol district, you know, even if council approves it to go into effect starting July 1, you know, really, we're looking at next year is what we're looking at. You know, we're looking at next May, June, July. What does that look like next year? So that's really kind of what we're planning for. And, you know, some of those expenses related to that won't drop until late in the budget year, because even if I order 2 cars for those officers, if you approve it, I'm not going to see those cars probably till perhaps May, March, like we are right now. So those expenses will be deferred because we won't pay for those cars until they come in and are equipped and those types of things. But I think that, you know, that really adding the officers addresses what we know is coming. I think anybody would know that we're going to have some complex public safety issues down there. It's going to affect the police department and the fire department as well. And John's department, it's the Pier is going to bring a whole new complex dynamic set of circumstances that this town's never seen before.
But on the other hand, we've got to have a plan to pay for that.
Agreed.
If we stay not raising our millage, we don't have no plan to pay for it. Except hope that this happens and hopes that happens. If we raise our millage rates, we've got a plan. We've got some money coming in to help offset that stuff.
Agreed. Like Chief Clemens said, at some point, if everything stays the same, you're going to have to start shaving off some services. You know, you got to start looking at something different to say within this same framework, we're going to have to do less in order to provide the minimum.
Well, I'd be like saying, telling John, you can't pick up trash but every 2 weeks. How many people in this town is going to have John come by and pick up trash? They're going to be.
Well, it's like,
Oh, yes.
it's like Rob said, that window gets smaller and smaller and smaller. He used a much better word than I did, but even in our operational budgets, not even the wish list though, even the operational budget, you see where all the increases are. I've reduced my line items over the last few years, a few hundred here, 1,000 here, whatever I could spare. But what keeps going up? The fuel keeps going up, insurance keeps going up,
Labor.
Supplies, materials and supplies, nothing.
Labor is
Yeah, the labor, you know, what you pay for the retirement system, what you pay for health insurance, the town's portion, everything goes up every year.
Diana,
And you have no
if
control
we
over that.
decide to raise the millage rate, then that needs to be done by what, August?
Let the county know by August,
Right.
but you need to know.
We have
Put
to
it in
have
the
2
budget,
readings
right.
and need to put
But
the
that's the
budget.
other thing, just so you do know, you really do have till August, because in the year of reassessment, you can't possibly do it till August. Or not this year, but the following year, just so you know. You can't do it till the county gives you what the number is, and that is a last minute detail that comes out July.
So we
August.
really want to do it this year because we're gonna have our hands tied next year.
I think you are. I mean, you can raise it, but you get all kinds of,
Well, next year we may top out where you can't, since it can't be over 10 mil.
no, that's not true. Every year that you have to do a recalculation. The reason why it's 8 mils this year is it's a bank of 3 years that you're going to. And this year,
We have a
the
freeze.
state came out and said that the cost of living is 8%, which is just a huge number. We've never had such a number. So it kicked it up. So this is probably the highest I've ever seen since they started doing this 10 years ago. This is the max. And I would never go tell you to suggest that you go to the max. That'll just get people too riled. But
Chief, let Aaron talk.
Yes.
Don't get him
So
out of here.
that- so
He's being very
yes,
patient.
I was just getting ready to do that. So Diana brought up a couple things too, as we're kind of making our deliverable list to work on is, this summary of request by fund, this general salary, or the general fund operation 706, that's where Heritage is included. And I just want to make a point before, Luke comes up here to talk a little bit. Heritage contract actually runs out in May. What I have decided to do, especially in the interim position with the new administrator, is to extend their contract 1 year and let the new administrator evaluate what's happening with Heritage, and the services that we're getting for the new administrator to determine how that gets extended. I think that's a prudent thing to do. But beyond that is, again, they have their annual, contractual agreement. But what we need from you all is really, and Luke's going to talk about it better, is, how do we move forward, especially with the replacement of the computers, but our network upgrades, which are a huge issue. So Luke, I'll let you take it from here to kind of explain to council.
Sure. First off, I appreciate everybody's time and letting me speak in front of you today and giving me this opportunity. We've been here since roughly May. Sorry. We've been here since roughly May, since we entered into the agreement. The first 2 months was a learning experience, and know a lot of staff, learning the intricacies of how things work. Over the last 2 months, we've kind of shift phases into, instead of putting out fires all the time, is evaluating where you guys are and where you need to be. We've had the opportunity to work with a lot of the senior managers and hear their issues and the problems they have, and deal with a lot of them firsthand. And one of the biggest thing is the network infrastructure is completely ad hoc. Is you have some pieces that are, say, HP. You have some pieces that are 8 years old. You have some pieces that were bought off of Amazon that if fail, a $500 piece of equipment is going to take your whole town hall offline all day, if not weeks, to get the pieces in. You have parts, with the first responders, where a single piece of equipment fails, both first responding offices, the police department and the fire department, are completely offline. So what we looked at doing is building a robust network to address all these issues that have scalability built in, because we know you guys are going to grow. We know there's future plans, new buildings, there's going to be changes. So we designed this network so it can adapt to these changes and what comes forward. We also built in a lot of redundancy, so a single piece of equipment is not going to take a company offline entirely, or a whole department, or anything. There is certain areas where you have pieces of network equipment bungee cord to a wall. And if that $2 bungee cord fails, the whole department's down. For how long? So we partnered with Fortinet, and they're our network provider choice. They're right up there with Cisco and Juniper. They're a great American company. We really like working with them, and we've worked really well with them doing the same type of transformation in other municipalities. So what we're essentially doing is looking at replacing every piece of the network equipment in every facility. And in addition to the networking piece of it, we're also putting in software to be able to audit the network in case something happens, whether it is an employee issue visiting websites. There's a million different things that could happen. If there is an intrusion, is there a forensic trail that you can provide the company, the authorities with, to look into this? Another major piece is also with the police department. They have very strict guidelines they have to abide by for CJIS and for SLED, and keeping up with those accommodations and making sure that they're properly secured. I'm sure you guys have all felt this pain, is the lack of Wi-Fi. You go to the conference room in the town hall, there's one password. You go upstairs, there's a different password. You go here, there's no password. So, what we'd look at doing is put in and standardizing the whole network. So no matter what town facility you're on, you have secure access to the network. And then you can also provide the guests at large, whether they're, visitors, vendors, whatever, also internet access, but away from your network. So you're just giving them internet access. And in doing all this, it's going to take a lot of the downtime that people have experienced now and allow us to focus on more end user help. So instead of us addressing, the telephones going out in the fire department constantly, or every time somebody goes in the attic of the police department, the internet goes down, we could start working on really improving and providing a digital transformation. you know, as Chief Hoffman mentioned, they are relying on technology as a force multiplier. It allows you to, your employees to be more proficient at what they're doing. And if you're gonna go in that route, which is, you know, a very sensible way to go, you have to have the basis for everything is your network. So the other issues you're facing right now is everybody knows of supply chain issues. Try to go get a new car, go try to get a new motor. You're looking at weeks, months, years. All of your network equipment right now is not under any manufacturer warranty. So that means two things. The first is like you have a firewall. If there's a new threat that arises, Iran comes out with a new threat, a new way to hack it, that firewall is not getting updated and it has no knowledge of this new threat. Because it's not updated, there's no subscription to it. The other part of it is there's no hardware warranty, so if it fails, we now have to source a new piece of equipment. What we're seeing on network switches, months. We have some people waiting months to get them. So with the hardware warranty, we included a 3-year hardware warranty on it that's extendable after 3 years, but it's next day replacement. So if a piece of equipment dies, they're overnighting that piece of equipment to us the next day to be here. We've also included some spare equipment in there too, so we don't at the time even have to wait the next day. First responders can't afford their phones not to work, you know, the next day. We also included, you know, proper equipment to protect the equipment. So, you know, if we're putting a $2,000 switch in place, right now, often it is plugged into the wall, no surge protector, no UPS. You know, it's screwed on with, you know, screwed into the wall with a drywall screw. So we include equipment there to put network racks, put the equipment securely in there, so unauthorized personnel can't go in there and say, oh, let me try to fix this, and take down the whole city department network. What we also planned for is a dispersed workforce. We all learned during the pandemic at times people are gonna have to work from home. There's gonna be different situations, and this allows for kind of a borderless network where people have the option to work from different places securely and efficiently. And I fully am aware of the large number of this network and what the big number it is. But if you look at some of the recent cases, just locally, Horry County Schools, when they got ransomware, their complete IT system is down for 2 weeks. How is the police department gonna function, finance department, everybody gonna function without any IT for 2 weeks? So it's not always, can we afford it, can we not afford to do it? Municipalities become such a large target for criminals because your services are so critical that they know you're willing to pay the ransom. So it used to be in years past, they tried to hack you and steal your data. What they do now is they hold your data hostage. So you can't operate, and they essentially hold you ransom until you pay it. Now, say you do pay it or your insurance company pays it, you're gonna see your rates go through the roof on it. And you're also probably gonna start seeing that your insurance companies are gonna start requiring IT attestments that you have these safeguards in place. Simple things like multi-factor authentication. So when you log into your email, you gotta put a password and you get a code on your phone. It's like everybody does for their bank. These are things that insurance companies are now all requiring from basic businesses and governments. So that's why we propose this. And what we want to do is we want to be your guys' partner for 3, 4, 5 years. Just as everybody's talking about having, you know, an asset replacement plan, there is other things that are, you know, beginning to age, and we want to be able to project 5 years into this. So you guys know, 2024, we're looking at this, and we have options, and we can align with where you guys are going to. You know, so that's kind of the overall scheme of it, is really looking, you know, at efficiency, scalability, and security.
Right now, we own all of our laptops and computers, is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Has there been any evaluation of any benefit that may be gleaned from a lease program? Or do we not have the quantity to make that
We have looked at that as a business in the past, and typically, in the short term, it's a less of a capital expenditure, but over the course of the ownership, especially with network hardware, you end up paying significantly more. Laptops and desktops, they're not too expensive, looking, around $1,000 a piece.
I'm just saying how much they change and,
Right,
compatibility and so forth.
right.
But if you run them on a 3-year cycle, you've got
You
you
nailed
can
it.
sell them on Gov Deals or wherever.
Yeah, and we look at the
Like-
lifespan of a workstation to be 3 or 4 years. The majority of your guys' workstations, the ones we recommend to be replaced this year, are in the 6 to 7 year range. But the majority of your computers are all in excess of 4 years old. The networking equipment is offered network as a service, is typically called, where we own the equipment and you lease it from us. Now, the problem in that is this. Say you were to part ways with us, you decide to go work with another group, we rip out your entire network. That's the bad side of it.
I have a question. I
Yes, sir.
thought when Heritage started that we had a fairly large expenditure for hardware. I was under the assumption that we were getting a new firewall, did we not?
No, so in the initial contract, the hardware that was purchased was 2 backup appliances. One for the city administration side, which is, it's a smaller unit, you don't have a ton of data. On the police side, mostly due to the advent of body cams and dashboards, there's a huge amount of data. So it's really just a server, we call it an appliance. And it backs up locally, and it also backs up to the cloud. What it also does is if that server fails, it allows you to bring a copy of that server up right away.
I have one other question.
Yes, sir.
On your networking, is most of it cloud managed?
Yes.
Okay.
It is, it is all cloud managed. And the biggest part of it, and this is a big part of the funding, is the reporting functionality of it. So right now, the only person who looks at the firewall logs, and they're very limited, because you only have a week of retention, is me manually going to look at them. What should be done is there should be a primary point in the town who gets all these. And I've worked with different people with it, and again, a firewall report, something simple as HR, who's going to what website? Who is taking part of every month, we send out a security awareness test. And it's usually like a 10-minute webinar about how not to get phished. And then there's a second one where we actually try to phish you. But nobody's getting all these reports right now. So there's a lot of oversight that is being entrusted to us that we want to make sure that there is some accountability, that people are looking at these things. A common thing is, data loss prevention. Is somebody inside sending credit card numbers out? The technology we're putting in place will detect things like that. But somebody has to be alerted to it.
AI is gonna go a long way.
And the program is called 40 Analyzer. It is AI driven, very much so. And it also does things like there are constant vulnerabilities being found in firewalls and anything. Just this week, Fortinet released one, said, hey, there is a big vulnerability released. Go patch all your equipment. This does it automatically. Right now with your guys' Sonic walls, that's not happening. So there could be a lot of vulnerabilities that aren't even aware of.
And other people are.
Yeah, and it's a lot of people versus you, There's a lot of people out there. So that is where we want to go with the network. And that, like I said, the price includes it for every single facility. An important piece that includes is having this facility with their own network infrastructure. Right now, it's fed from the police department. So we're bringing in this, we would have to get an internet connection, from the Spectrum or HDC. Same thing with the fire department. They get their internet through the police department. So if the police department were to be physically broken, the fire department's completely down. And we see that as, how we build in redundancy into things. And we do pay particular, attention to first responders and the special role they play, and make sure they have more redundancy in place for them.
So Luke, I just want to, and I pretty much know the answers to these, but I want to make sure council. Mr. Holder brought up something to me as you were talking. We need to make sure, we did not put the numbers of the proposal that Luke put together, because Luke is still tweaking some numbers.
Yeah.
Because we've had multiple conversations with him about the computer replacement, because we need a plan, as we've talked about, on what are the priority computers that need to be replaced. I think you have a red, yellow, green
Roughly, yeah.
matrix for the number, for when a computer gets replaced. So we're trying to be responsible and go, okay, here's the prioritization of what needs to be replaced now, here's what needs to be replaced next year, that plan that you all have talked about. And Luke's still, I think, tweaking that some.
Tweaking it, and roughly the numbers kind of align. There was 6 that me and Captain Miller with the police department identified based on both how important they are to operations and the age of them. The rest of it was approximately 23 to 24 computers across the different departments.
And Diane and I've kind of looked at that, and honestly, there's some that we saw on the list were like, well, does that person really, we need to probably tweak that number a little bit, and we'll work with Luke about.
And there could be like an extra computer at the front.
Yeah, he just did a whole big picture thing, but, the $144,250, that replaces the network equipment and the PCs. This has slash PCs. I want to make sure your general fund monthly maintenance is 123.
Right.
The 144 is just because this is just.
No, the other half is the police.
Okay, so I need to make sure council understands that number, because I don't think this is.
I don't think
this is
that's
ours.
I don't
Is
think
this-
that's,
we
and
need
we tried to
clarify
break it
that.
into general administration and the police office and the police department.
I just took your schedule, you had one police and then you had everybody else.
Yeah,
This is the everybody else.
okay,
The police is somewhere else.
okay, yeah, so that
That
one
comes out of
Hospital.
hospitality.
Yeah.
Okay, it goes back to and I brought that
I saw
up
that.
because it goes back to a little bit about what Ms. Keating talked about, what we had talked about a little bit, that, this 144 is a true number for you all. It's not the total number, because the rest of it for Chief Hoffman is coming out of hospitality. So that's what we gotta clean up.
So we can pull your part out too if some of it's fire, but I don't know that.
It
You
is.
and I have to
We'll
work
have
a
to
little
talk
bit.
yeah,
about
we could
that.
absolutely do that, yeah.
And then some of Public Works may not need computers, because all they do is get one email a day.
And that's something,
So we'll have to talk about, to try to be
Well,
fiscally
and
responsible.
that's where doing another run at this
Yeah, I
sheet
agree.
We are.
brings down that 1.1 million, that, hopefully by the end of the day, we're at, 3 million or less, such that only a 3 mil increase will cover us.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
I mean, ideally.
Yes. So,
And like a good example is like what we recently found in the fire department, where you had a laptop and a desktop, and by using the laptop as a desktop replacement, it fixed that issue at a cheaper price.
Right.
So we took a very wide approach to this based on numbers. And we can, especially the computer replacement, we use just a general number of, I think, $1,250. That's roughly a computer. But what we didn't do is we don't charge to install computers. We consider that as part of your monthly fee that you pay us for. So there was no fee with that, because ultimately it benefits us having better computers. There was some labor associated with the network equipment, because it is such a large job. And we know in some cases, we're gonna have to do some contractor work to run new cables, to actually mount access points. So we did include some labor into that to cover, because it is a significant undertaking.
Can we break that down by any, using police and fire first and then?
Yes, ma'am, and roughly the numbers were in terms of labor for the fire department was $5,000, and for everybody else, $10,000 in labor. And it's a little disproportionate because the police department has some additional security requirements related to how their police cruisers securely connect into their system. So there is some additional configurations and security done there.
So-
Always have to be special.
sorry. So that's an important number for us to know as
Yeah,
we
we just gotta
kind of
get with
whittle
Luke.
down and get with Luke and clean this up just a little bit, but from your all's perspective as we move forward. And, I know we've had multiple conversations just
Yeah.
about from a security perspective that honestly worries me some, and I think it does you
Yeah,
from a
it's-
town perspective that we've got to address, but.
Well, this is certainly an area that has been ignored for quite some time. You know, not only facilities, maintenance and so forth got us into trouble last year. This is an area that we've been sorely lacking in, and as technology continues to grow, you know, we need to at least get halfway caught up. You know, we might have to do the other half caught up next year, but, you know, we gotta start making that progress such that we remain current on, you know, how fast IT changes from a security perspective anyway.
And, you know, just since, you know, really 2016, it seemed not that long ago. But just municipalities and the way the world has changed, you guys are such a huge target. It used to be businesses, it used to be healthcare organizations. It's now they're going after the municipalities, because like I said, you provide such critical services, they know you will pay. And, you know, it's a lot of threat, you know, there's a lot of nation state actors, it's a lot of people all looking for you. Just because you're a Surfside, a little, you know, beach community, you're no different than New York City, you're just a number on the internet. So, you know, you guys are really a large target.
Just before we kind of, I guess, wrap up with another question, Chief, do you have anything to add? Because you have a big part of this. Is there anything that you want to add to the, just know from an IT perspective, and we've talked, police has a lot of.
Well, we've certainly spent a lot of time working with Luke and Heritage to address network issues. We've got a couple of things burning right now with some SLED issues from hardware, VPNs and other things that are urgent needs to be able to address, to be able to stay secure from a network perspective. And, you know, I think that I agree with everything that he said. You know, the machines being replaced.
And you know as well as I do, SLED and CGIS requirements are rapidly evolving. Where what you had a couple of years ago, you're ahead of the curve, but as these technological requirements and regulations come through, it's a constant, you know, force evolving where you have to keep reassessing where you're at.
But this 60K brings you up to date.
Their number was roughly, for the network was, I believe 36,000. And then 6 workstations, so that was, I think that was in around.
I got network at 52 and machines at 8,300.
Okay, yeah, that's.
So about 60.
So that they
60.5.
still do have some older machines, and that we want to, you know, develop that fleet maintenance cycle, so we could say, next year, these 3 get replaced. Next year, these ones get replaced.
And if I could just mention, we are working with Luke and Heritage too, as some migration things are happening through NCIC and SLED right now in our dispatch center.
Mhm.
We're hoping to be able to cut some costs too, so they're helping us find some other areas where we might be able to cut a few of our monthly expenses, a T1 line and some other things that we may be able to eliminate, which end up being $300-400 a month.
That T1 line.
The T1 line alone is,
Yeah.
we're hoping to be able to eliminate that this year. And some of these upgrades will help us get to eliminating other redundant costs of things that we don't
They
need.
still had a T1.
That was my reaction.
Well, that's SLED requires that. So.
Yeah.
Yep, but it's outdated.
Yeah.
And
And
part
they told
of,
us that last month.
and part of what we've also found is doing this evaluation to see what equipment needs to be replaced. We've uncovered a lot of rabbit holes we weren't aware of. You guys are aware a couple of weeks ago, the internet was down in this building. We've uncovered a lot of issues that have serious business side effects. That right now there isn't a network diagram. There isn't, something as simple as just a diagram outlining where all the fiber runs, what's plugged into, what county lines come into the fire department. So part of this process is going through that and building the proper IT policy. You know, part of it is also, you know, helping with HR. So when you have somebody come on board, there's a computer usage policy. They sign a document saying they're not gonna go on Reddit during the workday. You have no, right now, there's no content control. So a lot of this stuff that we're looking to do is policy driven, where we give you the tools to enforce the policies. You know, so we don't want this to be another vendor. We want to be a partner in your guys' success. And, you know, I'll say the senior management has been amazing to work with. And, you know, I am very proud of the progress that has been made because each department's made huge strides.
Okay, so we have about $334,000 here, give or take an ish, in my math in my head.
Yes, ma'am.
Or where were you at, Ms. Keating? I'm sorry.
For everything that we've got, police and other.
Okay.
Included our monthly fee.
Yeah, monthly fee.
Yes.
Yeah. So that brings us up to date or where you recommend us to be this year. And then beyond that, into next year and beyond, it's basically an asset management
Next,
process.
yeah, I mean, next year there's other pieces that need to be addressed.
Yeah, that's what I
yes.
mean about
Yep.
asset
Yep,
management. Other
absolutely.
things will
Like we could
expire
put
or
it
whatever.
into
Yes.
But we need to do a replacement schedule.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
what we
but
want
this
to,
brings us up to date.
yes.
And then from there, it's.
The most critical thing right now is the network, and we see that as the most critical thing to be updating. And we, you know, we want to put you guys on a 5-year plan. So computers that you replaced this fiscal year are already being planned to be, you know when they're gonna be, needed. You know, we also want to plan, so, you know, like, I know you guys are looking at hiring a lot of people. With new people comes associated costs with us, because you have to buy another Microsoft license, it's another computer.
So I think what we have to do with that, to Luke's point, and we need to make sure that when we talk about people, and you're pretty good at this, we talk about salaries and benefits, but we really should include, to give a real clear picture to council, we really should say, if Kenny is gonna get a new police officer, it's salary, it's benefits, it's whatever that startup uniform cost is, it's all of that, so you all get a true picture.
Absolutely.
So we don't have, so there's no ambiguity to, well, we gotta buy gear and all that, because of. So, and we kind of, Diana and I talked a little bit about that, that's a good point that you just brought up. So you're seeing, boom, here's what it's gonna cost. And if there's a car associated with that officer, you can certainly show that, but it's part of the officer, it's part of the picture of what it should be.
And there's been cases where some employee's been hired and that computer hasn't been accounted for said new hire. So something was found in the closet, that was in the closet for a reason.
Well, there's no secrets, if a department head says we need this person, and we say it's gonna cost, whatever the number is, you're gonna know that that includes the first set of uniforms, that includes other things, and I don't know how Kenny feels about that, but I think that's the best way to show it. The number's gonna look bigger, but it's gonna be everything in its totality.
You won't have to go back and look at each individual thing, but.
You won't, here's the
It'll be
cost.
there, and make us know that that's
That's
what it is.
Yeah,
I mean,
that's
that's
the
just what it's gonna be up front.
Yes.
You mentioned licensing. Does your media include our Microsoft licensing?
So that's,
Even for office? Or-
that's one of the biggest fees associated. The two biggest fees associated with your monthly bill is your Microsoft 365 licensing. So that includes your email and your office applications.
Do you include like, let's say Adobe Acrobat?
That's an
on the
additional, because some people do have that, and that's an additional. But in that 365 license, you're getting your email, you're getting your office.
Excel.
You're getting spam protection we put on top of it. We back up your email separately from Microsoft to a third party. And we put a 24/7 security on it. So if somebody, in Indonesia logs into Chief Hoffman's computer into his email, we get an alert 24/7 notifying us. The other largest part of that, of your monthly fee, is the backup of your data. There's a large part of that, and part of it is data is growing exponentially, and particularly to the police department. So we have that device that backs up all your data locally, hourly. Every hour it makes a backup, and then as their internet permits, which is typically daily, sees it to a secure site too.
So right now, if we would get hacked and locked out, at least
Yes.
we only would lose an hour.
Yeah, and there's no 100% you're gonna get hacked. There's no surefire tool. but the best prevention is backups and off-site backups. And included in that data protection service, you could actually bring your servers up in their cloud while you procure new hardware. Because it's not just hack, I mean, we're, you know, right by the coast too, it could be a tidal wave, it could be a lot of things. So, but the protection of those digital assets is one of the biggest costs incurred in this, both in, you know, backing them up and securing them. You know, and the same thing, including that licensing fee you get on every computer is Bitdefender antivirus. It's your antivirus. You get a program called MDR, which is Managed Detection and Response. And that's a piece of software that's monitored 24/7 by a security operations center for any anomalies. So if in the middle of the night, we had one case not here, somebody was going from computer to computer plugging a USB drive in. We got a call 2 o'clock in the morning, hey, is this legit? So that's included in there too. And then also unlimited on-site support is included in that monthly fee too. So typically we have, once a week, we have 2 techs here to do any on-site work. We also, you know, about 90% of our work is done remotely where we can remote in. Included that monthly fee is everything, you know, me helping with all the planning. But there aren't overages, so if there is, like recently we had a couple incidents with the fire department and some phones and some fiber cables. The only associated fee was the contractor to come in and get some new fiber. We didn't charge anything extra for that. We don't charge anything for being here at 3 in the morning, which has happened. So we like to keep that monthly fee flat, except when there's additions, like new people or buildings.
And I will tell you, I think all of us have probably called Luke or Ty.
Yeah.
All hours.
Daily?
All hours and I'm not gonna, not everything was roses when Heritage first came on as our provider.
Big agreement.
And, you know, there's no sense in sugarcoating it, it wasn't. But I think to their point, I think us learning, it has definitely gotten better and smoother, and we're still learning and we're still growing. But what was that number that you just gave, Ms. Keating, about the Heritage? Do you remember?
334.
So it was 334, but that included,
The annual maintenance.
that was.
And we did, from last year's contract that we signed, we did include a 4% increase.
Yeah.
Typically,
Because that's what's in the contract.
yeah, typically we do go higher, but
Yeah, I remember.
yeah. And there's the option to go into a 1, 3, or 5 year option where we could lock in lower rates. But as Mr. Clemens said, you know, I think that's a decision for the next administrator.
And I still think the number eventually, as we go through it, especially looking at the computers, could go down a little bit.
It could be,
also.
yeah.
Okay.
You know, and there are some cases, you know, we also make recommendations, like, we could sell you guys a monitor for $200, but you could also go on Amazon and get one for $85.
And we have.
And you
Yeah,
have,
we
and we
absolutely.
encourage you to do that. We don't make our money selling monitors and keyboards. So if we could save you guys money somewhere, we will tell you, hey, it's faster, quicker, cheaper to go do this. So, you know, we respect the fact that you're the stewards of, you know, taxpayers' money, and we take that very, you know, we like work with municipalities and we don't want to gouge you at all. And that network number also was, you know, it could come down because, like, you know, we put a lot of access points in some buildings. And the police department came back and said, you know, Captain Miller said, I don't think we really have a need for Wi-Fi. So as we refine that, there, you know, there is the potential for some cost reductions there too.
It's a lot safer.
Yeah, and you know, Captain Miller said functionally, we don't have a need for it. Either they're at a workstation or they're in their cruiser that has, you know, a mobile wireless. So we're not gonna needlessly put things, you know, where things don't belong.
Any other questions for? So, Luke, thanks for waiting.
I
I appreciate it so much. Thank you.
Thank you
sir.
guys for having me. I really enjoyed this process, this listening, seeing kind of how, sausage is made and.
You don't want to know what's in sausage.
Just eat it. No, but I do appreciate you guys.
It will be in touch.
Yeah, and any questions, feel free to reach out to me individually, any questions you have about it. I'm always available to you guys.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you guys so much.
Thank you.
Or I can call him for you.
So-
It's gotten
Yeah.
so bad in the morning, he'll say, hello, Sherry. It's
All you
8:02.
gotta say,
Glad he doesn't have me for a customer.
So, as we were listening, Diane and I were talking as Luke were talking. So I want to make sure, well, one, is there anything else that you all want to talk about or kind of go over here? Any questions? And I think we've kind of got a plan to move forward. I'll kind of go over that and make sure I'm capturing what you all want us to do. So, Diana has already started looking at the summary of requests by funds and trying to look at kind of what you all talked about taking some of those things out of that $1 million that could be is funded in other places and things that we can kind of clean up and do those things that we've had that conversation about to readjust this, to show you a more realistic number. This was a realistic number starting today. Now we're going to have another number.
Well, and is there any opportunity, I had great hopes with John's 1.5 million, that, the real number is only 300,000. But unfortunately, that's in the wrong fund. Or do we have any remote hope of any kind of net effect of any of these numbers? We sell on gov deals.
Well, let's think, both sides, I think, I will tweak it some more. There might be a few, but there isn't anything that's gonna be.
Yeah,
It's not gonna be 1.1 million, but
Yeah, my only
Plus,
general.
we could still use the 700,000 carryover that you said is sitting over from there for the old chambers that never got built, that's gonna be carrying over.
But that's already in the reserve we have now, which is
Yeah.
the 4 months. So that's
Right.
not gonna help me make it go up.
Right.
But we can look at some, I think what's gonna happen, this is my gut feeling, but haven't done this in a while. We're gonna come down to, it's gonna be the people. So I guess my first thing is there any people that you wanna say right now, no way, don't bother, don't waste your time? That's what I really need to know, because if we don't wanna do it, you don't wanna do it, or if you
Well-
want me to do them all and then you eliminate, that's fine, but I just wanna know.
there were two that I had questions about, and I know we've gone around the block a couple times with the administrative assistant. And what, and that might be something that the new administrator says, yeah, I don't need it, whatever. But we have an HR risk manager
Yes.
as a new position, and then we have a finance person as a new position. One of those is probably not new anymore. It's probably a replacement.
Well, the HR person, no, the finance person went away when COVID came.
Yes, so the finance, and that's a good question, Ms. Keith. The finance position, Diane and I had a lot of conversation about this too. So the account finance position was an open position since 2019. And then the HR, and Diana feels that should be filled based on responsibilities and all that within her office. So her office is her, it is
Her
the,
and her.
yeah, it's Diana,
Her,
finance
and him.
director. It is the payroll, which we're actually redoing that job spec now, and we may retitle it as that goes out for, to be filled. And then this is another position that was frozen that Diana feels we need to add. The HR risk manager that Vicky is filling right now needs to be its own separate position. It should not be tied in with finance
But there are
and falls under.
other
the
things to
administrative.
be considered, because there are third-party service providers that provide a lot of HR type services
So we
that
could
we
consider
could
that.
consider that may be cheaper.
We could consider that, yes, but we could consider that. I have a lot more discussion. I think we could consider that. I think the town, not looking at size, but looking at number of employees, some of the things that I know are dealt with. There's no proactive approaches really to risk management other than a few little things that we do through the municipal association that could lower our insurance rates to, just from the HR perspective of EEO training and all that. And yes, ma'am, you're correct. There are third parties that will do that. So is that something we can look at? Absolutely. If council wants us to reach out, see what that would be.
I mean, that might
We
be
could.
something that can be a more immediate response to a need.
It could, yes.
And again, defer a head count for another year, for the next year's budget, maybe. I mean,
We could, there's a lot of
shoot
options.
fish in a bowl, you know?
Absolutely, we could. I do know this, that position needs to be filled. And quite honestly, I think that position needs to be filled right now.
Well, I know, in my many, many years in corporate, I have had very positive results and success with third-party HR suppliers.
And I'll be honest with you, I don't know a lot about that, but I can certainly research it. And if any of the council members have any advice, I will reach out, try to figure that out and look and see what that would look like. I just know that we have to get something done with that position. And we've actually looked at this year's money, and we can fund this year, whether that would be a person or looking at a third party. But we put it here because we really haven't grabbed it and done anything with it. But the position that was open since 2019, that is something that Diana feels like that we should still fill. We could certainly have discussions on that, just like we are all the other positions. But we feel it's a need.
But those were the only three that.
Okay. And the admin, to your point, Ms.
And
King,
then the pier, the four on the pier.
would be, yeah, so we need, I don't know if, I mean, we're gonna be meeting again in about 2.5 weeks, I think is our next, but that next meeting is really, we're calling this a discussion. That next meeting, here's the proposal of the budget. So we need to narrow it down and here's here's the budget book, to move forward.
But we need to decide
So
too
we
whether,
need, I didn't mean to interrupt you, Mayor.
we need to decide too whether what we were talking about on the pier, about the store, about the employees, about what we're gonna do. And that's gonna affect the employees.
It will. I mean, we're gonna have to decide, we're gonna have to make some of those decisions. Now, I don't know if you all, we've got another work session scheduled for the 13th, I can't remember.
April 13th.
Schedule. April the 13th. If you all feel that we need to do something in between, our timeline's tight for putting all this together, but I guess it is what it is. But it sounds like that there is a huge, maybe not difference of opinion, but the store on the pier sounds like that's a little point of contention as far as, is it even needed? Do we see any value of having that now? Is that something that the pier could open? John, we could have that space and see what that looks like next year. There's certainly a discussion with that to see what the traffic is on the pier. What does all of that look like? I still think John should have a personal, I think there should be a person on the pier. I truly believe that. And I think you will
Yeah,
find.
but one is different than four.
Yes, ma'am. One is way
And
different.
if we don't open that door, then we don't have to worry about the rolling window. We
One
don't
is
have to
way
worry
different
about the other.
than four, but that fulfills a need from a public works perspective. But you all need to decide on the store. I think that is something we need to decide on pretty quick on what that looks like.
I say give it to a private company.
So,
Give it to a private
because that's 4 people. I mean, that's three, well, it's three
If
people.
there's really a call for it, I think somebody will step up and want to rent some space to sell souvenirs.
We don't know what the third space is gonna be, or the
Well,
fourth.
the way it stands now, if
Never
you get
be
a
in
restaurant in
business
Building
with
D,
business.
there's nobody to sell T-shirts or mugs or any kind of memorabilia.
They're right on the corner. All you gotta do is walk
Yeah.
across the street. They're right there
I
on
mean,
the corner.
if you look at me and certainly John, speak up, how you feel about this, and Kenny also. My personal opinion as the interim administrator is that, there are a lot of things that are still unknown on that pier. From what it's gonna look like from public safety to all of that.
Be done.
I think that we worry about making sure there's someone on the pier from Public Works to take care of that pier, and whatever issues are on that pier to the best of our ability, then that gets reevaluated. I think there's so many needs here from the store perspective and just based on what we're seeing right now is we defer that, let the pier be open for a year and then reevaluate it. Nothing says that public safety can't use that space along with public works, and then we go, okay, we are gonna put a store, we see a need, or we're gonna rent this space out because we've had it.
But there's more to it than just having a college kid or whomever sit there and collect $5 for a t-shirt or whatever. There's a whole lot of accounting and marketing
We gotta go to trade
and
shows.
supply chain
Yeah.
and all this other kind of stuff behind that, that the town does not have resources to be a commercial entity.
They're not in that.
End of story, period.
Thank you, Bob.
If Folly Beach cannot do it with a full staffing of parks and recreation people and still lose money and have an extremely gorgeous gift shop with everything in it, from beach towels to necklaces to earrings to, you name it,
The ice cream.
they
the
can't make
snack bar.
money. We're not gonna make any money trying to sell t-shirts out of this little cubby.
So.
Especially when we have valid purposes for it, for safety and maintenance purposes, in my opinion.
We'll put a design thing, go to
So-
the.
I think we have.
Let somebody get a kiosk.
So how
I
do
mean,
you
I
all
told
feel?
Bill this from the minute he brought up this whole Folly Beach nonsense.
So what's the direction from council for me to?
I would follow what Cindy's saying, just scratch it and just wait.
The store part.
The store.
Store, yeah.
Correct.
All right,
We
what
still-
about
I think we
that?
should hear from the people that want the store.
We still need an employee.
And that'd be
for
somebody
Delta.
from the Pier
That's
Committee.
different, and that doesn't help fill your hole.
I think a
That's it.
security maintenance person,
Yeah.
if John says he needs an extra person to do that,
You need,
because there's something different that we didn't have with the old pier, and so be it, see where we end up.
I say we let Rob talk to, the peer committee.
And I'm gonna be honest with you, I don't think we need, I'm gonna say this, and I have a great relationship with the peer committee. This is not a peer committee decision, this is
No, it
a
isn't.
council town decision.
The financial
The peer
decision.
committee has already said that they recommend that a store, but I think as discussion points happen, we say it's not gonna happen.
Well, you got a difference of opinion. You got $110,000 cost, and you've got a difference of $250,000, $300,000 sales, or $120,000 sales. That's where the difference is. It's not the cost. It's in the,
What's gonna
what
be
you
sold.
actually think you're gonna be able to push through that little space.
And that's, and you're
That's
right,
what I'm
And
knowing.
it does give you somebody on the pier full-time.
but that person
We
on
can
the
do
pier
that.
full-time, you cannot, if they
It's not a
work the
maintenance
store,
guy.
it's not a
They can't do
maintenance
other
person.
things.
All they have to be is the store.
They can pick up the phone and call. They can, if they get something needs to be happen.
I think that's, and I hear what you're saying, Mr. Kinkin. I think that is more problematic than you actually think than it would be. I really do. If you've got a bunch of customers in there and somebody's,
You're not gonna have them inside, they're outside. They're standing at the door.
You gonna shut the door on them?
You could,
Well, you
that's
gotta,
why you gotta
how
pull
long-
down the door.
how much do you have to have in profit, not sales, profit, not revenue, but profit,
Net.
to pay for that roll-up door that they wanna put in after the fact?
I,
That ain't cheap.
I think the thing is, and again, I don't know if we necessarily say never. What we say is that with the needs that we're looking at right now with this pier and what it's all gonna look like, and the other issues that we all, other needs, we just defer it. We just say, right now, we're gonna use the space for this, and then we're gonna defer it and see what happens. And don't close the door on it totally, but, look
The
at
first year is when you're gonna make the sell the most. 5 years from now, you're not gonna sell as much as you do next year.
I put a kiosk,
Then that is a
I
possibility.
mean, it is,
That's another option.
it could be,
take,
it could.
take the t-shirts and coffee cups that are in town hall and put them in
Put
a
a kiosk,
kiosk.
that is,
It's right.
it is, I mean, that is not,
Hire a college intern that are always looking for opportunities over the summer. And they can run the kiosk from
yeah.
10 to 3.
Frankly, I would like to see these objections come out to the peer committee long before now.
It's just like,
But it's really-
we don't need the peer committee.
It's really your decision.
Well, I don't
mean,
think
you
that.
just- you're eliminating the peer committee.
Make
Everything
recommendations.
they've
They haven't
recommended,
really
we turned down,
to us.
everything.
Yeah, I can't speak to
Well,
that.
part of that is because what they wanted to do was so far be after the fact of when it needed to be done. They were all great ideas that we needed 4 years ago.
There's nothing that
Yeah.
can't be done in the
Plan.
future, though.
Yeah, I can't speak to that, Mr. State, and I'm not saying that whatsoever. I know the relationship I have with the peer committee and discussions that I've had. I just know we're looking at this budget in its totality to try to figure out the best way to be able to spend the money. Because I'm not a market analyst. I'm looking at it from the town perspective of, okay, we've got all of these positions here that we need. How do we make all of this work? And do we think this is gonna be a bigger benefit than firefighters? Or do we think it's gonna be a bigger benefit than police officers or all the other stuff? That's all I'm looking at. Because I've worked hard with the peer committee since I've been the interim to try and make things better.
Yeah, they were
Get your questions answered.
established
I have.
way too late
And
in the
think
process
they
to
would-
accomplish what they wanted.
I think they would say that. They may not like this, but again, they're a committee of recommendations. And, to your point, Mr. Kingan, that is probably a fair point. That we're sitting here having this discussion about a store. I mean, I remember having a discussion with the peer committee. The mayor was there when I brought up John's point. And I said, no one from, and I will say this, it's on record. I said, no one from council has told me yet this is not supposed to be a store. And maybe it's a little bit my fault. I should have brought it up a little sooner and had more discussion, but many things going on other than that peer. So, committee. So, it would have probably been nice to have a little bit more discussion, but these are gonna be hard decisions as looking at millage increase and all these other things. We're just trying to slice the pie and make the best decision. But I don't think we close the door on it. I think we go, maybe do a kiosk, and then we see how it's gonna play out.
If the recommendation was to create a store, it should have been brought to council in the first place for a vote.
Yeah, and I didn't.
And apparently it never was.
I never did.
I don't know anything about that. Because that is an enterprise, that is a town enterprise thing.
Yeah, any committee is supposed to make recommendations to council and they're supposed to vote on it, and that's
I
our
don't know
direction.
how the tentacles grew for the store. I just,
No idea.
That was
Try.
Bill
I
and
think
his
there's
pipe
too many
dream with Holly
positive
Beach.
negatives, and there's a little bit of, you know what it's gonna cost to put a police officer out there, you know what it's gonna cost to put a public works out there. You know for sure this is gonna cost, let's say, $100,000 a year, but you're hoping that you're gonna bring in 250. And are you willing to take that chance right from the door, or wait a year, or, do a kiosk and wait
let's see what
and
happens.
see how much interest there is?
Because there have been some things, working with the peer committee just in my short tenure, that have been positive and good, like things that, that we've had questions about, that we worked through, and some of the recommendations, that they have just in my short tenure with them. They may not like all the answers because
It's
they
back
are.
to the same situation I said earlier, it's about the fishing licenses. It's important to whether the bait shop's gonna take that off.
And I think they'll end up
And
doing
if
that.
they don't, then you're gonna have to put somebody.
You've got to
out.
have somebody
You're
out
gonna
there.
have to have somebody out
You
there
will.
anyway.
And I will tell you, Mr. Stan, you're absolutely right. Somebody's going to have to do that. I think the bait and tackle shop is leaning more toward doing that.
I
because
hope they do.
I do too.
I
They
hope
see
they
the
do. I think
potential, and I'm
I
trying to
think it's a
direct
better
them.
potential, but stay in agreement, and they ain't said they would do it.
So if I'm hearing you correctly, from our planning purposes, is as when we come back with the proposal, we leave one person in for John, we remove the store and the other 3 people. Did I say that right?
Correct.
You asked for 2.
Well, I was hoping for 2 only because of the amount of hours the thing is open. If the daytime guy goes home at 3 o'clock,
Yeah, you're gonna have to
from
have
6 in
some
the
kind of
morning,
staffing.
you're not closing the
Yeah,
pier
you
till 10,
do.
11 at
And
night.
that's a great
Someone's
point.
got to lock
There needs to
up,
be 2.
and I'm thinking there should be 2.
Why don't we come back, we'll show you what 2 looks like, we'll eliminate the 2 right now for the, and then I can have a conversation with the peer committee, because they did do some analysis, and Alex did a great job with a lot of that stuff, from analysis of cost perspective and revenues and all of that, but it's just a lot of needs.
He really did.
He did, and I'll give Alex a ton of credit. Alex,
What it would bring in.
the whole committee, and we looked at that, didn't we, Diana? Actually, our proposal is more from the monies than what Alex did, but Alex, I'll give him his props in front of everybody. He did a great job with all of that. Don't close the door, but I'm going to move on with other decisions. And then we'll go back, and Diana's kind of already wrote some notes, we will look at the list of, well, again, let me go back. Are there any other positions that you think it's like, listen, you know, the administrative assistant?
Yeah, I think that one can go.
So do you think, so how do you,
Does everybody think that we need 4 firemen on at one time?
No, we don't.
And with the thoughts of possibly getting a grant for these other ones later on, I mean, I'm just asking the question. I know we're asking.
Don't you at least need 3 at a time to cover the 3 shifts?
and I certainly can respect Mr. Stevens thinking about saving money, but I guess my only issue with this is, and I'm gonna do what y'all tell me to do, and I'm gonna love you for it if you give me people, but you all recognized 4 people were absolutely needed in the SAFER grant. The SAFER grant was just a funding mechanism. That's all that was.
For 3 years.
Yes, sir, and it was.
And that takes a lot of money away.
It
for
does.
3 years that we could.
It does, and I think the SAFER grant may have closed. I have to
And
look
that way,
for next
what
year.
I'm looking at, you just said a while ago, if we hire these 4 people, we're out of the SAFE grant because we ain't gonna hire them more.
No.
But because you can't get them people to
No,
pay for them.
but we can always put in for another SAFER grant, because,
Yeah, but it won't help. We ain't gonna hire no more people.
well, actually, we need 2 more people. You need 6. You really do. You need 6.
What'd I tell you?
I think I remember him saying
I
that.
think I said that.
He actually said it. I was gonna give him
That's
the.
right, it was 9.
It needs 25, it needs 25, 26.
Well, no, that didn't even include the.
I did.
The FBI says you need 2.8,
You know,
2.9
I'm
per
willing,
1,000?
I'm looking at it
I will
as,
tell
I'm
you-
willing to give him 2 people. Find 2 people. But I'm willing to wait another year to look at, maybe he gets his SAFER grant and takes care of
That's
this.
a whole nother year.
But you can't
Well,
use,
but-
you can't use it on the ones
but
you
if-
hired today, though, can you?
If we tweak
Can't
what
use it on
we
there.
have, then we come down to
Right.
a realistic number of what we have to continue.
Remember, he asked for 9.
You know, I will tell you, I've been very respectful.
That way, if it,
We'll
if
take care of
it's
deer
comes
food.
back,
Sure,
I say,
no.
you know what, if we take this from 4 to 2, it meets our objective, then so be it. But I think if we just leave it as is with the, you know, the other changes,
Then we'll see
we
what it
said,
plays out.
see where it puts us.
I do.
And, you know, trim some of the net
See what it looks
effects.
like.
I
See where it
disagree with
puts
Oh,
us.
that.
and Mr. Stanley, listen, I don't take this personally. What I do take personally is when you say it's always more. I take it personally. And I take it personally because
Well, I'm
I tell you
sorry,
what,
but it-
until you pull a hose line on that fire
I
truck
pulled
over
a
there,
hose on a fire truck.
then come over and let's do it. Because I'll tell you right now, I don't appreciate the jokes about more. What I appreciate is a discussion about how many firefighters I need that makes my firefighters that are running with 2 safer. That's what I appreciate. I don't
I'll
appreciate
go back to you
the
and say,
jokes.
Mutual Lake, where's it at?
I appreciate
Where's
the
it
fact
at? Where's it at for Surfside then?
it's coming here to
Okay,
Surfside.
all right.
And it's coming 8 minutes away. When you run a house down here that's loaded with fuel load and the lightweight constructed down here and I'm running with 2 firefighters, I'm not gonna get into a debate. I just don't appreciate the fact that you're just sitting there saying you want more. I started with 9, I knew I wouldn't get it. I know what my staffing factor is gonna look like because I've been in the fire service for 40 years. And I know what it takes to be able to run a fire because I crawled down the hallway and got lost multiple times. And thank God I got out alive. So I appreciate the conversation and the discussion about budget and money and all that. I totally get that. What I don't appreciate is just the haphazard, they just want more. I will never come to this council and ask just for more because I want freaking more. I come because I have a need and I can articulate the need. And I'm sorry, I don't mean to get upset because you all have a hard job to do. But so do I when it comes to protecting my firefighters.
Well, see, when I proposed the 4 people, that's what I was thinking at the time. You have 3 people to cover your shields, then you had that floater.
We did.
That's what I thought.
Yeah, and that's
But right now, what I'm looking at is a budget.
100%.
And then I'm not saying that you don't need all 4, or all 3, or all 4, whatever. I'm just telling you, because maybe we can get 2, go ahead and get 2, and push that other to next year.
I think the thing is I think The problem with two, and again,
I know
Mr.
what
Stanley, I'm gonna take whatever you all give me, because I tell you, Kenny's got needs, and John's got needs, we all got needs, and I don't want this just to be a fire department need.
Yeah.
The thing is, I have 3 shifts. If you give me
I
2,
know.
I don't know how I address it. You say, Rob, we're gonna do 3, 4, and floater, you just ain't gonna get it. That at least gets me a minimum staffing of 3 people on all shifts. But I think we we'll go back.
I think it's the best thing to do.
We'll
Go back
look
and
at
just
this,
let's go.
and we'll do that.
I
Absolutely.
think that no single department should have to take the burden of the cuts that need to be taken. I think that everybody, like I was talking about the 11% that I said, everybody needs to take a little bit. And if everybody, each director takes a little bit under there, then
Sure.
it'll lighten the load.
I agree.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I totally agree, and I totally respect the fact that, as the fire chief, you all had a very, very difficult job to do, and I wholeheartedly respect that. And at the end, if I get none, I'll tell you, I don't like it, but I'm gonna live with it.
I was thinking, give
If
you
we
one,
don't give you none, you're
give
gonna
you the
keep it.
floater, and that way you have at least be able to let people go on vacation, go training, whatever. You would have one person who would cover the one person that's gone.
I could, but what that doesn't do, it doesn't meet all those things that I showed you from the tasks that need to be, because that's just.
I understand that.
Can you
He's a
use
floater.
volunteers for those positions?
Oh, I've tried to use volunteers multiple times. We have about 5 volunteers that are active, and volunteers just come in on a response. Every once in a while, we'll get a volunteer to be able to come in.
Are they certified?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, full-fledged?
Full-fledged, but there's not enough. And they have jobs, they have other things, so they'll come
You
in
can't
and pick up.
depend
the
on
money.
being there all the time.
No, you cannot.
Whereas if you got a full-time man,
Yeah.
you depend on that person to be there.
Right. So it's part of the overall discussion, and we could certainly look at putting in for another, Myrtle Beach took them 5 tries to get it. So we could certainly be able to.
We only got 4 more to go.
That's sort of like I can pick on Kenny, I tell him, don't pick on him, thank you, these are good.
And the thing, we do get it. I mean, we understand it's a lot of
I'm not
needs.
trying to pick on the fire department, I'm picking on John, that were people, somebody, or that truck, that dump truck, it's done 20 years old. My goodness sake, and now
My grounds guys-
that truck another 20 years.
My grounds guy's not gonna need a computer.
So I think,
I'm not picking on nobody, I'm just trying to.
Let's save us $1,200
It's
right
fine.
there.
Well, they could have one computer that they all could log into.
No, I'm saying, but the person I'm asking for, the live equipment operator, doesn't need a computer.
But they
So do
still
you
need
all-
an email address, don't they?
do you all feel
Don't
that
they
there's a
need
need
email
to have
address?
any type of
No,
work
just my
session
supervisors have email.
now in the next?
Really?
I think,
Well, when-
like, we'll look at it next time.
Let's say
Get this done and work on it.
Vicky, I know she's
Instead of
leaving,
rushing.
but let's say Vicky
I'm not
wanted to
talking
send out
about-
something.
we're not talking about one in
No,
between,
but
we're
you
talking-
send
Some
it out
people have to get it, the paper copy.
Do y'all not-
Well, we got one on April 14th.
She emails everybody now their pay stub,
April 14th.
except for, I have like 8, 9
Yeah.
people that don't have email.
It's
addresses.
a 13.
That
But-
13.
And they wouldn't even know how to turn on a
So,
computer.
that one, You're gonna come and
So what we're gonna do is we're gonna take your all's recommendations, and we don't really need, I don't think, talking with Diane, and we have to have the discussion about the millage right now. I think let us come back, and certainly if y'all wanna have that, I think we could come back and show you how the number has changed, which would probably change the discussion about the millage. Would you agree?
Well, and
Not really.
I
Or
think
do you
based
want to
on,
have?
You only have one person you're taking out, just the administrative assistant.
Please,
that and the-
other person.
The other-
They're not in here.
That's a
Two
peer
people
fund.
have a peer fund, so that doesn't change anything.
Yeah, peer funds and the peer
Peer
fund.
fund's a peer fund.
well, but I think if we get a new evaluation of, the effects to the general fund
Right.
and the tweaking and the, net effects and so forth. And we are still at a very huge gap of needing to recover, more money than we're identifying, so that the hard decisions have to be made that, you're not getting 4, you're not getting 2, you're not getting 3 cars, those kind of things. We may want to consider a meeting before the final one, because the 14th, we're supposed to be, here's your proposed budget, And, you know, we're supposed to be saying yay or nay, right?
You're talking about after the 14th or before the
No,
14th?
before the
13th.
14th.
Okay, that's what I thought.
I mean, if
Probably
it
next
looks like
week.
there's still a significant gap that some of
Big
those
gap.
hard decisions have to be made,
Then we
then
probably need to have something.
we may want another meeting before we get to the 14th, because the 14th is supposed to be the proposed
It
budget.
is.
So you go to 4, he goes to 1, and you get rid of that one position on the pier, and you get rid of the administration position.
It may change.
I would
You
like,
could shrink that number down maybe to 0.
I would like to know.
Yeah,
on
not the
millage
general
rate
fund.
of
Here isn't gonna
3,
do a thing.
If we raise the millage rate of 3, what it would look like, separate from this, saying this is the money that this 3 would bring in
Yeah.
to us.
Well, but again, it
Well,
is.
three is gonna bring in
That
$225,000.
But
is-
but if we tweak it enough,
Shows on paper what-
I mean, it's a pipe dream at this point, that you're gonna tweak it enough, don't get me wrong. But say we tweak it enough
75,000 per bid.
that
That's what it
the
said on here.
deficit is now 225,000, which is what 3 mills does. We have a recommended budget. But if it comes back and it says, you know,
For each mill.
we still have an
Each mill's about
$800,000 gap,
Each mill is
It's about those
mill's only
Yeah.
gonna give me 600
Yeah.
tops.
It should be about 3.
We need another discussion and hard decisions.
And I think just based on what Diane has kind of started looking at, even if the people, what we talked about removing or keeping,
About
We'd probably be about-
400,000 right now, but we can put this.
And it would be,
so 400,000, we can put that 3.
Looking, that,
So do you feel a little different about that, Mr. Kinkin, or
What?
about the village discussion?
Well, I think
now, or-
frankly, I'd like us to agree on what we're gonna do, so she has a number to work with. But I can wait. I mean, I'm not adamant about it, but I just feel like that I'm not gonna agree with 8. I might agree with 3.
So
You
I
know, that
think,
kind of deal. I mean,
Yeah.
and then the whole committee may say, no, we're not gonna raise taxes at all.
and I think that's where we go back, Diana runs some numbers based on this conversation, the number of people that we're looking at keeping, and see what that looks like. Because, you know, from the 2 people, well, that was Pier fund people, was that gentleman?
Yes, so that isn't gonna change it.
So that's not gonna change anything, the Pier people. So it would be firefighters, it'd be police officers, it would be admin assistant, it'd be those positions.
and we need to, we're under a time
Maybe
constraint.
when
on
Diane
the
comes up with
millage
this
rate.
number of whatever it comes up to be out of this $1 million,
Public
she
hearing.
can figure out
Well, it has
what
to
we
have a
need to
public
raise
hearing.
that
It's all part of the
millage
budget.
rate.
Yeah, and we could do that right off of those.
Off your scale,
Off the scale.
and then come back and say, we really need to raise this millage rate
This year.
to 4 or whatever.
Right, we
You know,
can, yes.
That would be a great help to me. I don't know about everybody else, but it would be a help to me to know that this is what we really need to do to get this funded.
I mean, if you're looking at right now, just as face value, let's just say, if you're looking at if you look at the admin positions, I thought I heard some discussion about let the next administrator figure out about the admin assistant. I'll tell you, that's a position that
You're
person
right.
need at some point. But you could defer maybe mid-year or something. So the admin position, you take away for right now, and revisit that.
Well, don't we have an admin in this year?
That's what I'm saying, as we're trying
Okay.
to eliminate some positions.
Okay, so we got these.
So if you look at full-time firefighters, 2 full-time police, 1 full-time public works, which you need that, you have justified that position. The 2 full-time administrative department, which would have been the admin assistant and the HR. I mean, if I had to choose one right now, because I'm not gonna be the administrator, pretty much I'd take the HR person needs to be done. Whether it's a business, third party, or it's an HR person.
We
That
could
is-
just defer those until the mid, like in December.
I wouldn't defer
right?
the HR.
No, not the HR, but I'm saying that, you know, if we cut down, let's say a firefighter, we can defer it till January.
Well, you could look at mid-year funding. You could.
Yeah, and then we'll know where the pier stands.
You could, yes, sir.
Tell me what to do.
Well, the
But
bigger.
again, I think
But I don't think-
Or we
if
could be in
we-
worse shape. I
If
know,
we
I know.
tweak it as we've discussed, we've now moved the mark that we're trying to accomplish.
Yeah.
And, you know, because right now, raising the mills up to the maximum we are allowed does not solve our problem.
So there's no,
So
never
we
I've never.
need
And we
to
won't
look
recommend it.
at what, we have opportunities that we can tweak and move
Yeah.
our
Okay.
goalpost. So if we move our goalpost and it's within that and we get everything that's left,
we can make an informed decision.
you know,
on
we
what-
can then say, okay, we can get all of this if we, you know, raise the mills by 4% or whatever, making up numbers. Or we say, no matter what we do, we still can't meet this. So more of this has to go.
Okay, let's do that.
And if we get to that, that is the answer from the initial thing, I think we might need another meeting.
And I think we probably ought to tentatively look at some point towards the end of next week.
And like the last time when Horry County raised the mill 4 years ago, right? We ended up reducing the mill.
We lowered ours, yes.
Yeah, we lowered the mill. So I mean, it's been a long time since Surfside Beach has charged mills.
Well, we went up, we brought it back to neutral, and then we went up 1.5 mils.
Right. Well, we brought it down before we brought it up, so it's still, it was.
We brought it back to neutral, then we added a 1.5 mils, and that was 3 years ago or 4 years ago.
4 years.
And now we're looking at this year and maybe year after next. But,
Well, the year after next, the county is gonna go up.
well, the county's gonna go up every year, they've already said that.
So,
Instead of charging for all these lots they're selling, they
Yeah, they're not just going up for assessment, they're going up every year.
They're a lot bigger.
Did Luke leave?
Giveaway.
Left his laptop.
well, they don't have the service, they don't have the coverage we have, except in fire. And they don't have the coverage.
Just noticed it.
If they did, they're not.
so right now, what we'll do is we'll go back, Diana will run some new numbers, we'll look at these positions, we'll make some hard decisions on what we're gonna do. And we can tentatively look at, just from a schedule perspective.
Do you feel later?
If we looked at, what's the date, the 23rd? Because we gotta have a
Oh, no,
little
I
bit of
said
time
later.
here, is the
You left your tab in
30th.
here.
Because we've got a council meeting on the 28th, tentatively the 30th, and then, well, the next meeting is not till the 13th.
That's
Yeah.
fine.
So we could really do it
I thought it
maybe
went
the
well.
3rd or the 4th of April. 2, 4, no 4.
We
Yeah.
got a meeting.
Actually, we've got a meeting on the 5th,
Good, good.
so
All right, well, just,
with the new,
holler
yeah,
at me.
that'll be a special meeting also.
Here yet. Holler at me
So
when you're-
we could either do the 30th or the 31st,
Okay.
which is a
All right.
Thursday. So
I'll talk to you
right,
later on.
today's
You're
28th.
welcome.
So if we look at next week,
At what day?
bring this back, we could either do Thursday, we gotta have a little bit of time, because there's other stuff going on too.
Next week is payroll.
The 30th or the 31st.
It's either the 31st. I don't think it's gonna take, if you just wanna do these things
I don't
first
think
and
it'll-
tweak it, I don't think it's gonna take, it shouldn't take, I'm only gonna really concentrate,
We're
and
gonna
let's look
concentrate
at you, is general fund, because everybody else is kind of,
Yeah.
okay.
How about the position in your office? Can you defer at the mid-year or not?
Depends if I can find anybody to replace the people I gotta replace now. And that's
I mean,
looking
I'm
at
just
my other
asking,
stuff.
I'm just
I
asking.
guess we
a
can
question.
try, it depends what we can find. I guess.
Well, again, I think if we can come up with the recalibrated target
Yeah.
relatively quickly,
And I think we can probably, I don't want to,
Well, you don't have to tell us today.
no,
You can send us an email.
we can do that.
We can try to do Wednesday.
I say Thursday, let's tentatively look at
We'll work for the
Thursday, the 30th.
Put it down.
Thursday, what?
Thursday the 30th, will that work?
Thursday the 30th.
I'm only here Friday next week, but you might not need me.
And if I do, John, we'll,
Yeah, just,
If I
yeah,
need
just
something,
let me hold
yeah.
you up.
yeah,
And
we'll let
then-
you know. So that will be in that, what's a good time for you all?
10.
Is it 10 o'clock? 10 o'clock okay with you all? So,
What time
I'm
is it?
retired, I
What
don't
time
have to
is it?
really think
keep John's. I'll cut one.
Okay, 10 o'clock.
So 10 o'clock on the 30th, and then that gives us a little bit of time to do a little bit more tweaking, because we've got budget book stuff, and then the next time we would meet If everything goes okay there, it would be the 13th.
Yeah.
For the budget. And then remember, the 5th is the special meeting for you all to interview the candidates, the
what date is that?
finalists for the administrative.
That's the 4th, 5th.
Yeah,
Yeah.
And Sherry's already sent that out.
April 5th at what time, 9?
Yeah.
Is that 9?
No,
Do you remember, Sherry?
I think it was 9.
Well, you're gonna send us a.
It's at 9.
I wanna
Well, you already-
say.
No,
That's the fifth, and the fifth one?
I did, I don't know.
It was
the
10
year.
o'clock.
Better damn well.
All these meetings, I can't keep them
There you go.
straight.
So right now, just to give you a quick,
No, 9 o'clock, you bastards.
for what, for the.
Damn it, Sherry.
She's talking about she'd like to slip in, she's retired.
Well, no, I'm up, but it's not like for
What did I
public
say?
purposes.
9.
9 o'clock.
All right, so here's a quick run.
Well, we haven't noticed yet, so if you wanna make it 10, we'll make it 10.
It says 9 o'clock.
Says 9, we'll just
Okay.
keep it at 9. So here's a quick run through for the meetings, just to kind of, for you guys. So we'll do another budget work session on the 30th. So it's Thursday, the 30th.
At 10,
At 10 o'clock.
okay.
And then your next special meeting is the 5th of April, starting at 9 o'clock. And that'll be with the finalists for the administrator position.
Will that be here?
Yes, sir, that'll be here. And then the 13th is the proposed budget meeting.
Sherry, send us all that.
I will, I'll do that.
Detail.
Proposed
Because
budget,
there might be something I missed in there that will change.
proposed budget, the 13th.
What time?
What did he say?
We'll look at that.
He didn't say, he didn't
10
say.
o'clock.
We'll look at
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
So, but I think right now that should get you, from a calendar perspective, pretty much.
What day is that?
What time is the one on the 13th?
Okay.
No, it's
I think it
Thursday,
started at 9
Thursday.
o'clock.
9 o'clock? on the 13th?
What day?
I think it was.
I don't know if we were doing.
Um,
I don't know if we have time.
yeah, I think it was 9 o'clock. I think we scheduled both of them for 9.
I like the 10 o'clock one.
What, hey,
Wait, what was that about?
what is a good time for y'all to be in a good mood? Is it 9
Oh,
or 10?
10.
Oh, about 7.
What-
I
11.
drank a couple.
Because if it's 10, I'm gonna make it 10:30.
People ask for 6.
Exactly. All right, yes.
We all done?
No, I think the day has gone, from my perspective, I think it's going exactly the way we wanted it to go. And we kind of figured that y'all probably want to add one, but that's okay.
So are we all done?
Does anybody else have anything? Chief Hoffman?
Good. Well, with that, I need a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
This meeting is adjourned.